After being reborn, the first thing I did was go to the hospital to abort the child in my womb, and then I filed for divorce from Gu Jing. I didn't fight for the custody of my son, Gu Shirbai, nor did I claim other properties. All I asked for was a seaside view house in a coastal small town. The small 3-bedroom, 1 living room apartment was decorated by me to be very cozy, and all the appliances I bought were parent-child sets. At first, Gu Shirbai thought that all of this was prepared for him and scoffed at it. It was not until he found that the pink children's room was piled high with dolls and the wardrobe was filled with beautiful princess dresses that he began to feel panicked. Both he and Gu Jing thought that I was ill, that I had gone crazy. He cried and questioned me. "Mom, I'm your own son, why don't you even look at me? But you're so good to the daughter you imagined." He didn't know that it wasn't an imagination. I really had a beautiful and well-behaved daughter. She lived in the memories of my previous life. Half a year after settling down in the coastal small town, I received a call from Gu Jing, asking me why. The process of our divorce was very uneventful, as simple as having a meal together. We both tacitly agreed that Gu Shirbai would stay in the Gu family. We didn't argue much about the custody issue. He never asked me the reason for my sudden decision to divorce and coldly completed the procedures. I thought he didn't care, just like he had never cared about the joys and sorrows of his wife, me, during all these years of our marriage. Now, half a year later, he suddenly asked me, why. At that time, I was hanging a portrait in the newly painted pink children's room. A woman was sitting on the bay window holding a little girl. Outside the window were the blue sea and rows of windmills. The golden sunlight fell on the little girl's face, masking her sickly pallor. I stared blankly at the face of the little girl in the painting. Why? I wanted to say that it was because we were supposed to have a daughter, and her name was Gu Shirwei. She was very beautiful and obedient, but unfortunately, she wasn't healthy. 70% of congenital heart diseases can be detected during prenatal checkups, but she happened to be among the unfortunate 30%. You had a brief fatherly love for her, but soon you would lose patience because of her frequent hospitalizations and surgeries. You would start to stay out all night, using the bad family atmosphere as an excuse. When I was exhausted from taking care of her, when I was praying outside the ICU that death would not take her away, when I signed the consent form to give up treatment alone and watched the doctor pull out her oxygen tube, you would be having an affair with your mistress outside and even openly bring Gu Shirbai with you, making him happily call another woman mom. But in the end, I said nothing. I just asked Gu Jing, "Did you have breakfast with Miss Zhou today?" 1 year after settling down in the coastal small town, I met Gu Shirbai. At that time, I had just returned from a trip to Xinjiang. I was walking home wearily with a canvas bag on my back when I saw the figures of the big and the small standing in front of the corridor. I instinctively stopped and kept a distance from them. As time passed, I rarely thought of this father and son. They didn't like me, and my feelings for them had also faded away during the long period of disappointment in my previous life. I thought that as long as I didn't deliberately seek them out in this life, we would never meet again. It was Gu Shirbai who spoke first. Although he was only 6 years old, he was precocious. His words were milky but hurtful. "The school organized a parent-child trip here. Grandma and Grandpa said that since I'm here, I should come and see you. This is the courtesy and grace that a Gu family member should have." I nodded silently. He really resembled Gu Jing a lot, not only in his delicate and superior features but also in the cold look in his eyes when he looked at me. In my previous life, when I broke down at Weiwei's funeral and when I climbed up to the 36th floor rooftop, the father and son looked at me with the same cold eyes. Gu Jing said, "Xia, stop being naughty." He also said, "Mom, stop being naughty." In fact, a month after the divorce, Gu Shirbai contacted me. He heard from someone that I had moved to this coastal small town. He specifically called and told me disdainfully, "They said that after you moved to the seaside, you specially decorated a children's room and even replaced all the daily necessities in the house with parent-child sets. But I won't live with you, don't waste your efforts." I calmly replied with an And then I heard him cheer on the other end of the phone. "Wow, Aunt Zhou gave me a new game console again. Aunt Zhou is the best." Then he hung up the phone in a hurry. Obviously, my departure didn't have any impact on his life. Compared with getting along with me, his biological mother, he has always preferred those games and also liked Zhou Tian, who always played games with him and gave him game consoles. But now, the coldness on his face suddenly cracked. His peach blossom eyes, which were so similar to Gu Jing's, were instantly filled with tears. He gritted his teeth and stared at me stubbornly. This time, it was my turn to look at him coldly. In the end, he couldn't hold on any longer. Before the tears fell, he turned around and tried to run away, but he tripped and fell to the ground with a thud. He lay on the ground for a while without getting up, just looking back at me. He was always like this. Every time I got close to him, he would always put on an impatient face, speak coldly to me, and show all kinds of disgust. Once my attention was slightly away from him, he would deliberately fall down or pretend to be uncomfortable, making me feel soft-hearted and helpless. But this time, I watched him coldly and remained indifferent. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief, with a look of confusion, puzzlement, and sadness on his face. He burst into tears in front of me with a "Wow, you're a liar. A big liar. You clearly said that you would love me forever and stay with me forever." 3. Gu Jing frowned and accused me. "Since Xia, although the child is young, he actually understands everything. You shouldn't be so cold to him." His expression was serious, and his attitude was as condescending as ever. It had always been like this between him and me. We were not like a husband and wife but more like an employee and a boss. Most of the time when he was at home, he didn't take the initiative to communicate with me. It was always me who took the initiative to report every bit of my life to him. Regarding the part about myself, he was always indifferent. Only when it came to Gu Bai would he interfere a little. He would even scold me sharply in front of Gu Bai and the servants without showing any mercy. As a result, every time he showed even the slightest displeasure, I would unconsciously reflect on myself, engage in internal struggles, and repeatedly think about what I did wrong and what needed to be improved. Now, seeing his face again, I only felt extremely annoyed. "Have you forgotten what you said to me when we got divorced?" He said that he hoped I wouldn't disturb Gu Bai's life in the future. Gu Bai was still young and would soon get used to living without me as his mother, and that would be the best for him. That was the longest passage he had ever said to me during the entire divorce process. Now he said matter-of-factly, "I was too naive at that time. Bai is your only child. Mother and son are connected by heart. He needs you, and you also." I interrupted him. "But I don't need him." Gu Jing was somewhat taken aback and stunned. Neither he nor Gu Bai had ever seen me being so blunt. It seemed that even now he still didn't understand my determination when I left a year ago. Just like he would never understand in his life that Gu Bai was not my only child. I once had a daughter, even if only I knew about it. On the day of my rebirth, I dreamed that Wei Wei was crying, and she also called me a liar. She said, "Mom, you promised me that after I'm gone, you would live well." I felt so sorry for her crying. I promised her that this time, Mom would definitely do it. I could only fulfill one of the promises I made to her and Gu Bai. 4. Once, my love for Gu Bai was no less than that for Wei Wei. He was the child I gave birth to after going through great hardships, the flesh and blood that came from my body. I once eagerly anticipated his arrival, when he couldn't speak yet. As long as he gave me a sweet smile, I could forget all the hardships and pain of being Mrs. Gu. At that time, I was willing to give everything, even my life, to him. As long as he could grow up happily and healthily. Gu Jing didn't love me. The story between him and me was very ordinary. We were childhood sweethearts who grew up together. When we reached the right age and didn't have suitable partners, we were matched up by our elders. I once felt uneasy because of this ordinariness. During my school days, I had witnessed what Gu Jing was like when he was in love with someone. The young Gu Jing was much more energetic and cheerful than he is now. Every time I saw him, he seemed to be smiling. He would smile indifferently when he was scolded, smile triumphantly when he won a basketball game, and smile with joy when he saw the girl he loved. When his peach blossom eyes smiled, they curved into the shape of a crescent moon, like the warm winter sun, making people's hearts flutter and fall in love at first sight. At that time, he would send the breakfast he made with his own hands to the girl he loved early in the morning regardless of the severe cold or intense heat. He would release sky lanterns all over the sky for her, and he would arrange flowers all over the playground and loudly express his love in front of everyone. He was passionate and crazy. That girl was a top student. She won awards in various physics competitions all the way and skipped grades early to go abroad to continue pursuing the truth of physics. After that, Gu Jing seemed to become indifferent to everything. Before the wedding, I once asked Gu Jing if we would really be happy. He answered me, "We will." Love made me blindly ignore the indifference in his tone at that time. I comforted myself that people would always grow up and become more composed, and the way he loved someone would also become more composed. It was not until Zhou Tian appeared by his side, a young and beautiful game planner, Then I realized that there was only one way for Gu Jing to love someone. He began to smile when replying to WeChat messages. To pay attention to the lipstick shades that he had never cared about before, to study women's perfumes, and to accompany the other person to stay up late to test the newly launched games. When I found his company nervously because he didn't come home all night, he was having breakfast with another woman and carefully peeling an egg for her bit by bit. That was a treatment I had never enjoyed. At that time, I thought it didn't matter if Gu Jing didn't love me. At least there was someone in this family who loved me. At least Gu Shirbai loved me. At that time, I didn't know that Gu Shirbai didn't love me as much as I thought. This child would later break my heart piece by piece. 5. That day ended unhappily. With the tempers of Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai, I thought they would definitely not come again. Unexpectedly, the next day, Gu Shirbai appeared downstairs of my house again, carrying a small school bag. This time, he was alone. When the property management contacted me, I was painting. On the beautiful grassland of Ely, a little girl in a princess dress was running freely. I didn't have any photos or videos of Weiwei. I was afraid that as time passed, one day I would forget what she looked like. So, what I did most often was to draw her bit by bit as I remembered her. From when she was a baby to the age of 5 when her life was frozen in time. I drew a lot, and they filled every corner of my house, but then I thought, how could my Weiwei only be in the hospital bed? So, I would go on trips every once in a while to take pictures of beautiful scenery and then draw her together with these beautiful landscapes. I was drawing this one a bit slowly. When I was riding a horse in Xinjiang, I hurt my right shoulder. It was still a bit difficult for me to raise my hand, so I hadn't finished this painting even after a month of working on it on and off. That was the first time I rode a horse. When I chose that white horse, the young man in the horse team hesitated and tried to persuade me, saying that this horse had a bad temper, it bullied strangers, and it had thrown several people off. I smiled and said it didn't matter because the white horse was really beautiful. As a result, when the group was halfway through the journey, the white horse indeed threw a tantrum. It suddenly knelt down on its front legs and threw me onto the grass. Everyone in the same team was startled. When a little girl's mother came to help me up, the little girl gently helped me pat the grass debris off my face with her small hand and asked me sweetly in a soft voice, "Auntie, does it hurt?" Later, I took a lot of photos for her and her mother. She reminded me of Weiwei, but in fact, the farthest place Weiwei had been to in her previous life was this coastal small town. At that time, her health was slightly better, and I planned a family vacation, but Gu Jing said he was busy. And Gu Shirbai said he wanted to participate in the testing of a new game in Gu Jing's company. In the end, only my daughter and I came here. Those few short days were peaceful and wonderful. During the day, I taught her to draw in the room, and in the morning and evening, we went to the beach to pick up seashells together. She said that when she got better, she wanted to live in this place for the rest of her life. So, when I got divorced, all I asked for was this seaside view house. This is a home belonging to me and Weiwei, having nothing to do with Gu Shirbai or Gu Jing. I didn't want Gu Shirbai to set foot in this house at all. Without hesitation, I gave the contact information of Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai's grandparents to the property management. 6. A few minutes later, the property management called again, saying that when he contacted Gu Jing, Gu Shirbai ran into the community and disappeared. After all, I had raised Gu Shirbai with great care. There was no way I could really let something happen to him. I sighed, put down the paintbrush, and went downstairs to look for him. I searched the whole community, sweating all over. In the end, I saw him waiting in front of my door, with a look of complacency on his face that said, "I knew you wouldn't leave me alone." I didn't say anything. When I opened the door, I let him slip in like a flash, like a proud little lion. He held his head high and began to patrol the territory everywhere. He asked me, "Which is my room? You must have bought me a game console." "Right, I want to go to the room and play games." I didn't answer. I asked him to sit in the living room and wait for Gu Jing to pick him up, and then I sat back in front of the easel and focused on finishing the painting. I had only painted a few strokes when I heard a loud crash coming from the children's room. I quickly walked over and saw that the painting hanging on the wall above the head of the bed had fallen to the ground. The frame was in pieces, and the knocked-over perfume liquid had soaked Weiwei's face beyond recognition. Gu Shirbai stepped on the bed and looked at me with a helpless expression. I don't like this painting. Why did you hang someone else's portrait in my room? Why are you holding her in the painting?" I knew that he might just want to take the painting down and didn't break it on purpose, I also knew that he was still a child and I shouldn't lose my temper over something he didn't understand. However, my tone of voice still couldn't help being a bit harsh. Didn't I ask you to wait for your father in the living room? Don't touch things randomly anymore. He sensed my restrained emotions, and his expression showed a bit of vulnerability. Before, whenever I broke something, you would always ask me first if I was hurt. I didn't answer. My gaze fell on the bed sheet that he had stepped on and dirted, and I couldn't help frowning. Come down first. He still stood on the bed without moving, staring straight at me. Mom, who is this girl you painted? Why did you paint her so many times? Why is every painting in the house of her? He was still too young to hide the fear and unease in his eyes. He saw those paintings that filled the house. And the girl in the paintings had eyebrows and eyes similar to his. Mom, why do the security uncle and the uncles and aunts living here all say that you don't have a son, but only a daughter? I said I'm your son, but they said I'm a liar. Even when I showed them our group photo, they still didn't believe me. This is my room, right? He jumped off the bed, as if to prove something. He opened the wardrobe, but was stunned when he saw the wardrobe full of princess dresses. Why did you buy so many dresses? Where are my clothes? Why aren't there any of my clothes? He rummaged around in the wardrobe, and finally stared at me with wide eyes, finding nothing, hoping to get an answer from me that could soothe him. I looked at his eyes gradually filled with tears and remained silent. His tears fell one by one in my silence. Suddenly, he went crazy, crying and pulling out the princess dresses in the wardrobe one by one and throwing them on the bed. He swept all the dolls on the bay window to the ground, unreasonably trying to assert his status. Why did you put someone else's dresses in my wardrobe? I don't like dolls. Why did you put so many dolls in my room? I don't like this bed and quilt. This is a bed for girls. I don't like pink. Why did you make my room this color? Why are you holding another girl? Why did you hang the painting of you and someone else in my room? I don't like her. I hate her. Hate her. This time I couldn't bear it anymore. Gusher bye. Get out. This isn't your room. There isn't a room for you here. 7. When Gu Jing came to pick him up, Gu Shirbai said to him in a panic, Dad, Mom has gone crazy. She keeps telling everyone that she only has a daughter. 8. When Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai came again a month later, they both became very cautious in their attitudes. Gu Jing said, Xia, you're ill. He asked me to have a video call with my relatives and friends and let them tell me that the daughter I painted, the daughter I told all the neighbors I loved deeply, didn't exist and was just my imagination. They took out the family photo album and forcibly pulled me to recall the past with them, but our past was too meager. Just like this photo album that couldn't be filled, it was almost impossible to find a few group photos of the three of us. Most of the photos recorded Gu Shirbai's growth, with some photos of me and him mixed in, as he gradually grew up. Perhaps it was the nature of boys that made him get closer to the person in the family who had more authority and could provide him with better conditions. He understood Gu Jing's indifference and alienation towards me, and he didn't want to take photos with me anymore. Now, they were holding that photo album with hardly any photos of me, recounting every bit of the past, desperately trying to convince me that I had never had a daughter. I sneered, Are you saying that I'm crazy? Gu Jing shook his head, No, Xia, you're just ill. He took out a surgical consent form, held my hand, and his tone was even a bit choked up. Xia, why didn't you tell me that we originally had another child? I looked at him in silence. Guilt and regret appeared on his face. Regarding Zhou Tian, I can explain, it's not what you think. He said that he only paid more attention to Zhou Tian because he cherished her talent, and being good to her was just a means to win over his subordinates. His tone was gentler than ever before. Xia, I know that you were impulsive and had an abortion and divorced me because you misunderstood the relationship between me and Zhou Tian. Afterwards, you regretted it, so you imagined that you had a daughter. Xia, it's my fault. I didn't maintain a proper distance with my subordinate, which made you misunderstand and feel sad, and caused you to be so seriously ill. We were husband and wife for 12 years in the previous life. And I had never seen Gu Jing speak to me in such a lowly manner. I stared at him in surprise, as if I was meeting this person for the first time. You know, in the previous life, when I noticed something was wrong between him and Zhou Tian, every time I questioned and probed him, he would only coldly retort, Xia, are you crazy? Even half a year ago, when he called to ask me why, he still didn't answer my question in the end. Now, he thought I was really ill, and suddenly he could talk. For the first time, He explained his relationship with Zhou Tian to me. He said, "Since you're ill and need treatment, let me and Shirbai accompany you and take care of you." Okay, I told him to get out with Gu Shirbai. 9. When Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai came for the second time, they brought a psychologist with them. At that time, I had just come back from Mexico a few days ago. The doctor's surname was Lin. He took a look at my neck and his tone was as easygoing as if we were old friends who had known each other for a long time. "What's wrong with your neck?" I raised my hand and touched the thin purple mark on my neck and replied casually, "I had a little accident when I was playing sea paragliding in Cancun a few days ago. That was the last stop of my trip to Mexico. When I was gliding in the air over the sea on a paraglider pulled by a speedboat. The rope connecting the speedboat suddenly broke. I was caught off guard and fell into the sea from dozens of meters in the air. Although I was wearing a life jacket, the rope of the paraglider strangled my neck and wrapped me and the seat together. I couldn't float to the surface at all. I gradually lost my strength due to lack of oxygen during the struggle and almost died in that sea. Fortunately, the guy driving the speedboat dived into the water in time to save me. Thinking about it now, it still feels thrilling." Dr. Lin didn't ask further. He took a look at the painting on the easel whose paint hadn't dried yet. Wei Wei was sitting on the paraglider, smiling at the blue sky and white clouds. He politely asked me if he could take a look at my other paintings. After I agreed, he carefully looked at all the paintings in my house, and then held one of them and asked me, "Can you tell me the creative idea of this painting?" It was a view of the water from an overhead perspective. Wei Wei was floating on the water face up, smiling and spreading her arms, as if welcoming and trying to embrace something. "I painted this after I came back from bungee jumping in the Gandaki River in Nepal. There were quite a few tourists who went bungee jumping that day. They were either nervous or excited and sought encouragement from their companions or the staff. Only I had a calm expression. The staff joked with me in English, saying that I didn't look like I was here to have fun, but rather like I was here to commit suicide, and he didn't even dare to push me, although he said that, when he pushed me down, he didn't show any mercy at all." The wind during the rapid fall pressed against my cheeks and my eyes. The momentary feeling of weightlessness made me in a trance as if I had returned to the end of my previous life when I jumped off the 37th floor. In fact, the memories and sensations at that time were very vague. Everything ended in just a blink of an eye, but this time, the feeling of freedom during the fall was so clear. When I was approaching the water surface, I had a hallucination. I saw Wei Wei's figure faintly appearing in the water. She smiled and stretched out her arms to me, wanting to hug me, but the moment I tried to hold her tightly, she shattered into the sparkling waves of the Gandaki River. I didn't answer Dr. Lin's question. Dr. Lin was very patient. He patiently tried to analyze the logic behind my actions. "Since when you had an abortion, the baby was just an embryo that hadn't developed gender characteristics. Why did you think it was a girl? Is it possible that you projected yourself onto it?" I laughed. "Are you saying that I'm narcissistic?" "No." Dr. Lin shook his head. "You're feeling sorry for yourself. Is there a possibility that you transferred your resentment towards your husband onto the child, but after you had the abortion, you regretted it? So you created an imaginary girl based on yourself?" Similarly, it's not that you don't love Gu Shirbai anymore, you love him too much, but you also take out your anger on him. You can only pour all your love for him onto this imaginary girl, but this little girl is too dangerous for you." He let out a soft sigh. "Wild riding, paragliding, bungee jumping, since have you noticed that you're always pursuing high-risk games? This imaginary little girl is inducing you to test death. If you don't open your heart and accept treatment, the consequences will be unimaginable. Since I want to help you." Gu Jing chimed in beside him. "Since accept treatment, let us help you and take care of you." "Okay." Gu Shirbai also came forward and tried to hold my hand, showing an unprecedentedly obedient attitude. I said, "How could Mom suddenly not love me anymore? It turns out that you're ill. Let us help you." "Mom, can you also paint a picture for me?" "You've never painted for me." I interrupted him. "I have painted for you. On your birthday last year, I gave you a portrait of you as a birthday gift. I was only above average in my academic performance since I was a child, and I couldn't compare with the top students that Gu Jing liked. But I had a great talent for art and was admitted to the best art academy in the country. Unfortunately, my parents always thought that I couldn't earn much money just by painting. They hoped that I would get married as soon as possible after graduating from the art academy, so that they wouldn't have to worry about me anymore and could go to live in New Zealand with my elder brother with peace of mind. I compromised. because the person they introduced to me was Gu Jing. At that time, I thought that I could still continue painting after getting married, but I soon became pregnant with Gu Shirbai. Family chores and raising Gu Shirbai gradually took up a lot of my time. Whenever I wanted to focus and paint a good painting, Gu Shirbai would suddenly start crying and making a fuss. I could only put down the paintbrush to coax him, and gradually I neglected my painting, until Gu Shirbai's 5th birthday. On a whim, I picked up the paintbrush that I hadn't used for a long time and painted a portrait of him. But he obviously liked the game console that Zhou Tian gave him better and casually threw the portrait aside. Later, I saw that painting under the small desk in his room, folded into a small square and used to prop up the table leg. 10. Gu Shirbai defended himself in a trembling voice. I didn't do it on purpose. I must have taken the wrong one. I smiled and exposed him. No, you did it on purpose. Because that day, you were dawdling and refused to take a bath. I confiscated your game console, and you deliberately did this to get back at me. You've always been like this. Whenever I don't do as you wish, you would hurt me by destroying the gifts I gave you and trampling on my kindness. Because you know that I love you and care about you, and I will be sad if you do this. You want to make me sad. Gu Shirbai's face turned slightly pale, and he stammered for a long time but couldn't say anything. 11. I raised my eyes and looked at Gu Jing. In fact, I had already seen his hidden intention of making peace. For example, in the previous life, Gu Shirbai's school never organized a parent-child trip. For example, with so many bodyguards and nannies in the Gu family, how could they let Gu Shirbai run out alone and not be in a hurry at all? Also, whether it was in the previous life or after being reborn, in fact, he hadn't worn the clothes I bought for him for a long time. From a certain day on, he, who had never bothered about his clothes before, started buying clothes and bringing them home himself. Later, I found out that all those clothes were bought for him by Zhou Tian. To make Zhou Tian happy, he never touched the clothes I bought for him again, and even changed his perfume to the leather scent that Zhou Tian liked. But these few times when he came to see me, he specifically wore the clothes I bought for him and sprayed the woody perfume that I preferred. I just didn't care. I didn't care why he suddenly wanted to make up with me after a year. I also didn't care why, since I had already made room, he didn't just bring Zhou Tian into the house directly. Because I didn't care, I didn't expose it. It's just that he had been so arrogant in front of me for so long. Even when trying to make peace, he couldn't let go of his pride. He only thought of using Gu Shirbai to make me soft-hearted and take the initiative to come back to him. Now, he thought I was ill. It seemed that he had suddenly found an excuse to lower his head to me. His attitude changed 180 degrees. In an instant, he learned to be gentle and accommodating, as if because I was a patient, I suddenly became a fragile item that needed his protection. All his actions had a great and selfless reason. For my own good, he performed so sincerely that I almost believed him. Gu Jing, you said that there's nothing between you and Zhou Tian. Then why did you spend a lot of money to find high-quality jade? Because she is prone to getting sick. Carve a Buddha statue with your own hands, and then kneel step by step up the 81 steps of Nanshan Temple and ask a senior monk to consecrate it. Even when Wei Wei was so seriously ill in the previous life, as her father, he had never done such a thing for her. Why did you use working overtime as an excuse to spend Valentine's Day with her? Why did you hug her and kiss her? Gu Jing's face also turned ugly. I smiled. Are you wondering why I know all this so clearly? It was your son who told me. The first time I heard the name Zhou Tian was from Gu Shirbai. Suddenly, one day, he started frequently telling me how nice Aunt Zhou is, what Aunt Zhou and Dad did together again. Mom, why can't you be as nice as Aunt Zhou? At first, he might have said these things unintentionally, but later, he was clearly doing it on purpose. As I said, he was precocious. After noticing that I would feel sad every time I heard the name Zhou Tian, whenever I did something that displeased him, he would deliberately bring up Zhou Tian. I knew he liked Zhou Tian and those video games, but it's not certain that he really wanted her to be his mother. He just took pleasure in using the revelation of his father's intimacy with another woman as a way to punish me and confront me. Especially after I had Wei Wei in my previous life, his behavior became even more excessive. During my pregnancy, he would casually say, "Mom is fat and ugly, she's not as thin and pretty as Aunt Zhou." During my lactation period, he would nonchalantly say, "Mom's belly is so flabby with so many stretch marks, her clothes are so messy, stained with milk, and she smells of milk. It's so disgusting, no wonder Dad sleeps in a separate room from you." when I was accompanying Weiwei during her surgery and hospitalization. He would often tell me that Gu Jing gave Zhou Tian this today and accompanied her to do that tomorrow. He would excitedly tell me how amazing Zhou Tian was, that she designed a new game again, and that he had a new game to play, unlike me who was so useless. After returning from a business trip with Gu Jing, he would tell me where he, Gu Jing, and Zhou Tian went and what they played. He said that others thought they were a family of three. He would show me the photos taken of the three of them in a boastful manner and ask me if they were well taken. He thought he was hiding his true feelings well, but every time he said these things, I could clearly see the malice in his eyes. I first experienced the innocent malice of a child from my own son. He was like a devil, repeating the incantation that drove me crazy in my ear every day. I knew that at that time, many nosy relatives and friends would maliciously provoke him, saying that with the second child, I would only love Weiwei and not love him anymore. I also asked myself whether I was really biased between him and Weiwei, which led to his wayward behavior, but after much thought, I was sure that I wasn't. Even though I was constantly shuttling between the hospital and home for Weiwei, I would ask Gu Bai about his well-being every day, carefully inquire with the nanny whether he ate properly, and help him check his homework. Unless Weiwei was having surgery, I would attend his parent-teacher meetings, even if I hadn't slept for 48 hours in the hospital and was extremely exhausted. In fact, before Weiwei was born, he didn't like my company. He always thought I was nagging and annoying, that I had nothing better to do than to hover around him. He preferred to stay alone in his room playing games. But when I stopped focusing on him and spent the attention and time he didn't want on his sister, he got upset. He could reject and not cherish it, but I wasn't allowed to give it to anyone else. 13. I didn't know who he inherited this selfish trait from. It wasn't until after I was reborn and left Gu Jing without hesitation, yet he shamelessly came to reconcile, that I was sure he was like his father, the man who, when I was exhausted by Weiwei's illness and my heart was broken by Gu Bai's constant intentional provocations, was busy having an affair and figuring out how to divorce me. Didn't I want to get a divorce too? I'm not a masochist, nor am I infatuated to the point of not being able to live without Gu Jing, but for Weiwei's sake, I couldn't. The cost of Weiwei's treatment couldn't be afforded by an ordinary income. However, if I divorced and left Weiwei with Gu Jing, given his attitude of preferring to spend time with Zhou Tian rather than visiting Weiwei in the hospital, I couldn't rest assured. Moreover, Weiwei's heart condition might not be able to withstand the shock of a family accident, so I could only grit my teeth and hold on. I often wondered why Gu Jing could love Gu Bai but not Weiwei. Weiwei was so beautiful and well-behaved, facing the pain of illness and countless surgeries. She would endure until she couldn't bear it anymore before crying, even when she was scared being alone with the nurse in the hospital. She would always urge me to get more rest. She missed her father and brother, confused as to why they never came to see her, but she never asked or complained. At such a young age, she was heartbreakingly sensible. It wasn't until after Weiwei died that I saw the long-prepared divorce agreement in his study. Then I understood that her existence prevented him from proposing divorce to me. A man who proposed divorce to his wife while his daughter was on the verge of death. He knew how much public outcry he and Zhou Tian would face. He couldn't afford to lose that face. Since he couldn't get rid of me, he took his anger out on Weiwei. Gu Bai saw how indifferent Gu Jing was to Weiwei and followed suit. Even though Weiwei liked him as a brother, he didn't want to stay in the hospital a little longer to accompany his poor sister. Even when I forced him to come sometimes, he would just sit there with his head down, playing games, and ignore Weiwei when she talked to him. Even worse, when I wasn't around, he would deliberately provoke Weiwei, just like he did to me. 14. The day Weiwei passed away was her 5th birthday. I specifically called Gu Jing and begged him to come home in the evening so that our family of 4 could celebrate Weiwei's birthday properly. The birthday gift I prepared for Weiwei was a painting. It was the same one that I painted again after being reborn and hung in the children's room, but was later destroyed by Gu Bai. I was holding her and sitting on the bay window. Outside the window was the blue sea and rows of windmills. The golden sunlight fell on her face, covering up her sickly pallor. Weiwei loved it and kept it by her side, looking at it from time to time, but until it was time to light the candles on the cake, Gu Jing still hadn't come back. I saw the disappointment in Weiwei's eyes. I went to the kitchen to call Gu Jing, but no one answered no matter how many times I called. When I returned to the living room, still thinking about how to explain to Weiwei why her father was absent from her birthday, I heard the 11-year-old Gusherbai looking at the painting with contempt and disdain, saying viciously, "It's so ugly, her face is as white as a ghost. In our school, a girl as ugly as you would only be hated. No wonder Dad doesn't want to celebrate your birthday with you." Wei Wei's face turned deathly pale. I could hardly believe my ears. Had Gusherbai been speaking to Wei Wei so meanly when I wasn't around? In all these years, I had never laid a hand on Gusherbai, but this time, I couldn't control myself and slapped him, holding his cheek. He looked at me in shock and shouted at me angrily, "Dad went on a date with Aunt Jo. He won't come back to celebrate this sickly girl's birthday. It's no use how many times you call. From now on, I won't celebrate her birthday either. Dad will divorce you. Marry Aunt Jo, and I'll be with them as a family of 3. I don't want this sickly girl, and I don't want you either." Wei Wei collapsed on the spot, clutching her chest. When I carried her limp body into the ambulance that day, I desperately prayed that God would be merciful one more time, but after the doctor's rescue, I was still told that Wei Wei's physical condition couldn't withstand another surgery, and they advised me to give up. Looking at the suffering Wei Wei in the hospital bed, my mind went blank, and I felt extremely lost. I kept calling Gu Jing, but he never answered. Later, I found out that he was in Zhou Tian's bed. In the end, I signed the consent form to give up treatment alone and watched as the doctor removed Wei Wei's oxygen tube and turned off all the medical equipment. Gu Jing was the last one to arrive at the hospital. Even Gu Jing's parents and the funeral home staff had already arrived by the time he rushed in. He questioned me, asking why I didn't wait for him and why I had unilaterally given up treatment. I thought to myself, what was there to wait for him for? Wait for him to get out of his mistress's bed and come to Wei Wei's bedside to put on an act of being a loving father, just to avoid being criticized for not being there when his daughter was on her deathbed. Should my Wei Wei suffer a few more hours for the sake of his reputation? I looked at him and then at Gusherbai standing far outside the hospital room door. The expressions on their father-son faces were equally indifferent. One was busy having an affair while his biological daughter was on the verge of death, not even spending her last birthday with her. The other had maliciously provoked his own sister to death. Why could they be so calm? Why didn't they shed a single tear? I suddenly found the father-son pair terrifying. 15. I know these are all things that happened in my previous life. They haven't happened yet in this life. And they will never happen again. Perhaps I shouldn't judge the 6-year-old Gusherbai for crimes that haven't occurred in this life, but I can't help it. I gently pulled my hand away from Gusherbai's and smiled at Dr. Lin. "Dr. Lin, you're wrong. The little girl in the painting isn't a dangerous presence for me. Gu Jing and Gusherbai are. If one day I go crazy or die, it will definitely be these two who push me towards madness and death." 16. When Gu Jing and Gusherbai came for the 3rd time, their attitudes became tough again. At that time, I was about to leave for Iceland. Just as I was pulling my suitcase to enter the elevator, I was stopped by Gu Jing, who came out of another elevator. He threatened me, "Xia, if you still refuse to accept treatment from a psychologist, I'll have no choice but to force you into a psychiatric hospital." I looked at him mockingly. "In what capacity do you plan to force me to be admitted? We're divorced, and you're not my guardian. We have no relationship left." "Ex-husband," Gusherbai interrupted. "Well, can't I do it then? I'm your son." I looked down at him. "Too bad you're still a minor." They were helpless against me. I turned to leave, but Gu Jing reached out to stop me again and accidentally tore the necklace around my neck. The necklace fell to the ground, and the cover of the pendant came off, revealing a small photo of Wei Wei that I had printed and put inside. Gu Jing stared at the small portrait in a daze, and finally lost his temper. "Since you decided to have an abortion on your own, you shouldn't regret it." I clenched the broken necklace tightly with my trembling hands, refusing to show any weakness, and slapped him in return. He understood nothing, he knew nothing. After being reborn, I also hesitated and struggled, but at the end of my previous life, Wei Wei lay in the hospital bed, crying and saying to me, "Mom, I feel so rotten, it hurts so much. If there's a next life, can I not be born into this world?" I really couldn't help it. I put the broken necklace in my pocket, without looking at Gu Jing and Gusherbai again, pulled my suitcase, and entered the elevator. 17. In winter, Iceland exudes an extreme sense of desolation. The surging waves crash against the black sand beach, and the dark sand formed by lava contrasts sharply with the white waves, waterfalls, volcanoes, glaciers, fjords. This small island boasts a variety of unique landforms and wonderful landscapes, due to its proximity to the Arctic Circle. The the daylight hours in winter are very short, the sun hovers near the horizon, and the morning glow seamlessly connects to the evening glow. The pink-purple belt of Venus in the sky can last for a long time. When I came, I brought a lot of expensive photography equipment. After landing at Keflavik Airport, I rented a car and planned to drive around the island to chase the aurora borealis. Unfortunately, either the aurora KP index was below 1 on clear days, or the weather was too bad with thick clouds, and I failed to capture any photos of the aurora. On the last day of my trip, the weather forecast predicted a blizzard the next evening, and the roads might be closed for several days. I had to give up the remaining itinerary. I was unwilling to leave without capturing the aurora, although the aurora KP index was still only 1 that day. Since the weather seemed clear, I decided to drive out at night and take a chance. I found an open wasteland in the wild and waited in the car until 3 a.m., but still saw nothing. Finally, I was disheartened and decided to give up. But sometimes, fate likes to play jokes. Just as I started the car to leave, the aurora appeared. The green light bands danced in the sky, flickering on and off, changing unpredictably, both magnificent and mysterious. I quickly grabbed my photography equipment, found the best vantage point, and set it up to record this gift from nature. In the temperature of more than 10 degrees below zero, I couldn't stand the cold after watching the aurora for a while, so I decided to take a nap in the car and let the equipment continue shooting automatically. The necklace that Gu Jing tore was hanging on the rearview mirror of the car, and Wei Wei in the pendant was smiling at me. Looking at her face, I also smiled. Wei Wei, look, Mom has brought you to see the aurora. 18. I lay in the car, looking at the dancing aurora outside the window, and it took a long time for me to fall asleep. As a result, I woke up a bit late, and it was already dawn. A strong wind had started blowing outside the car. The place where I set up my photography equipment was a bit far from the roadside where I parked. The swirling snow reduced visibility, and I couldn't even see the equipment clearly from inside the car. I calculated the time it would take to drive back to Akureyri. Considering the blizzard that was supposed to come in the evening, I got out of the car and braved the wind and snow to collect my equipment. At that time, I didn't know that the blizzard time predicted by the Icelandic weather forecast wasn't always accurate, and it was common for it to arrive earlier or later than expected. When I reached the place where I set up the equipment, I found that both tripods had been blown over, and one of the cameras was nowhere to be found. Blown away by the wind, I groped around in the snow, which was several times thicker than last night, for a long time before I found the broken camera. Fearing that the melting snow would damage the SD card, I quickly took out the SD cards from both cameras and put them in my pocket separately. When I finished packing my equipment and started walking back, the world around me was a sea of white, and the visibility was less than 5 meters. The car key for the vehicle I rented didn't have a car finding button. I could only carry the heavy cameras and tripods and try to make my way back to the car based on my sense of direction. I walked for a long time, much farther than the actual distance from where I set up the equipment to the car, before I realized that I had lost my way in the early arriving blizzard. I tried to figure out my direction, but I was exhausted. In the end, I had to abandon the heavy cameras and tripods, yet I still couldn't find the car. I took out my phone to call for rescue, only to find that there was no signal. I was left to search blindly in the howling blizzard alone. The raging storm grew more and more intense. The biting wind, carrying snowflakes, made it impossible for me to open my eyes. I walked slower and slower, feeling my body gradually losing heat. My limbs grew so cold and numb that I could only move forward on instinct. Finally, I collapsed in the snow. I thought I was going to die in the blizzard of a foreign land, but I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt a sense of relief. I said in my heart, "Sorry, Wei Wei. Mom didn't want to break her promise to you, but I really can't hold on anymore." In fact, Dr. Lin was right. I was indeed ill, and I had been tempting death. 19. After Wei Wei died in my previous life, I suffered from severe depression. Or perhaps I had already been ill since I discovered Gu Jing's infidelity, since Gu Shirbai constantly provoked me, and since I accompanied Wei Wei through countless surgeries and hospitalizations. Every day, the world seemed gray to me, and everything around me was full of malice. My husband and son were so cold-hearted, and my daughter was so pitiful. I struggled desperately, exhausting myself every day, yet I still couldn't see a way forward or a glimmer of hope. But for Wei Wei's sake, I gritted my teeth and persevered, pretending that everything was fine in front of her, not letting her discover the cracks in the family or the ugly truth about her father and brother, until Wei Wei's death. All the suppressed negative emotions suddenly erupted, swallowing me up like an abyss. On one hand, I told myself not to die because I had promised Weiwei that I would live well even if she was gone. On the other hand, I couldn't stop hurting myself. At first, Gu Jing and Gu Shibai did feel guilty. They tried to hide their true feelings, but they couldn't have been completely indifferent to Weiwei's death. People are sometimes so contradictory. They tried to escape their sins while also feeling compelled to feel guilty and make amends. They pretended that everything was fine in front of me, just as I had done before. Gu Jing stopped seeing Zhou Tian, and Gu Shibai stopped saying hurtful things to me. They pretended that we were a happy family of 3, but it didn't help me at all. I always remembered the identical cold looks in their eyes when they were by Weiwei's bedside, no matter how much they smiled at me or how gentle they were. In my eyes, they were still heartless, terrifying, and loathsome, the most detestable monsters in the world. The closer they got to me, the worse my condition became. I couldn't control my crying in the middle of the night, my outbursts of temper, or my self-harm. Soon, they began to lose patience. Thinking I was an embarrassment and a burden, they reverted to their old ways. Gu Jing started staying out late again, and Gu Shibai began his sarcastic remarks once more. The day I climbed to the rooftop of the 37th floor, Gu Shibai shouted at me with a look of disgust. "It's all your fault that Gu Shiwei died. It has nothing to do with anyone else. There's no genetic disease in our family. If you had given her a healthy body, she wouldn't have gotten sick and died." I stood on the edge of the rooftop, stunned. Was it really my fault? It must have been something I didn't pay attention to during pregnancy that caused Weiwei to have a heart condition and suffer in this world. The thin thread that had been holding me back from death snapped at that moment, and I jumped off the 37th floor. 20. Depression doesn't heal on its own after being reborn. Even though I got a second chance at life, those negative emotions were still there. On the day of the abortion, I even hoped that I would bleed to death on the operating table and leave this world with Weiwei, but I dreamed of her. She always begged me not to die, crying. I didn't want to let her down. That day, when I got home, I saw Gu Jing and Gu Shibai still living their lives without a care. They understood nothing, they knew nothing. Only I knew everything that happened in the previous life, only I carried all the pain, and only I remembered their sins and their hideous appearances. So I fled from those two monsters, Gu Jing and Gu Shibai, but it wasn't enough. Those negative emotions persisted, as did the pain and the sense of guilt. I didn't want to break my promise to Weiwei, so I clung to the memory of her, constantly reminding myself of the promise I made to her and struggling against depression. That's why I decorated a children's room for her, pretending that she was with me. That's why I painted so many portraits of her, almost obsessively. That's why I traveled the world, seeing the sights for her. I tried my best to pretend that everything had changed and was getting better. I tried to pretend that I was getting rid of those negative emotions, but I still couldn't stop tempting death time and time again. Every time I engaged in those high-risk activities, I lied to myself that it was what Weiwei wanted, but in fact, it was what I wanted. Now, the death I had long anticipated had finally come. I felt at peace in the whiteout of the blizzard. Slowly, I closed my eyes. 21. Beep, 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 beep. Suddenly, the continuous honking of a car horn pierced through the blizzard where the visibility was 0. The harsh sound cut through the wind and snow and reached my ears persistently, irritating me so much that I felt annoyed. I struggled with the dark and negative thoughts in my mind for a long time amidst the unceasing car horns. I really wanted to give up. I really wanted to give up. But then I thought of Weiwei. Finally, I opened my eyes, struggled to get up from the snow, and found the tripod that I had discarded earlier. To my surprise, I realized that I had been walking in circles, using the tripod as a crutch. With my almost frozen limbs, I crawled towards the direction of the car horn with all my might. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When I finally found the car, I realized that it hadn't been far from me at all, at most 100 meters away. How should I describe the miraculous scene I saw when I opened the car door? Shivering, no matter how many times I thought about it later, I believed that it was Weiwei's spirit that saved me in the deadly blizzard and guided me to safety, because it was simply impossible. The heavy tripod I had placed on the passenger seat, perhaps due to the blizzard shaking the car, had toppled towards the driver's seat. The necklace I had hung on the rearview mirror somehow fell and wrapped around the tripod, pressing down on the horn. In the continuous honking, Weiwei and the pendant smiled at me. At that moment, tears streamed down my face. Epilogue. After getting back in the car that day, my phone regained signal, I called for rescue, and half an hour later, Icelandic rescue workers arrived and took me to a local hospital for examination. Fortunately, my frostbite wasn't too severe. And I returned to China after a few days in the hospital. After experiencing that blizzard, my depression seemed to heal suddenly. I had always known that this coastal town was beautiful, but during the year I lived there, I had been living numbly, feeling nothing. Even though I traveled a lot, I couldn't really appreciate any of the beautiful scenery, but after coming back from Iceland, I suddenly felt that everything was different. The huge windmills in the distance turned leisurely. The blue sea gently washed the golden beach, and the glow of the setting sun on the rusty old ship was so beautiful that it made people stop and stare. The world was no longer gray, it was filled with so much color. I still lived there, continued to paint, and traveled around, but I no longer deliberately engaged in dangerous activities. I started to get involved in new media, posting the paintings of Weiwei and some of my travel photography works online, which attracted a lot of attention. Suddenly, I became a rising star painter and photographer with many fans. A year later, someone contacted me, wanting to hold an art exhibition for me, and I agreed. The theme of the exhibition was An Angel Once Came. All the works on display were portraits of Weiwei. Surprisingly, a large number of people came to the opening day, including Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai. Although I didn't care much, they had actually been harassing me. After realizing that they couldn't force me to accept psychological treatment, Gu Jing changed his approach. In both the previous life and this life, during our marriage, he had never given me flowers or any surprises. Now, he was actually trying to use this method to tempt me into remarrying him. I scoffed at his efforts. As for Gu Shirbai, every time he saw me buying things for Weiwei, he was extremely jealous. When I loved him before, he seemed to prefer video games, but now, no matter how many games Zhou Tian gave him, he would just tell her to leave. Gu Jing had also fired her. Now, it seemed that he wanted my motherly love more than video games. He cried and said to me, "Mom, I'm your real son, why don't you even look at me? But you're so good to the daughter you imagined." They suddenly stopped bothering me a week ago. I thought they had finally gotten tired and given up, but now, they showed up at my art exhibition. Seeing the wary look on my face, Gu Jing gave a bitter smile. "You don't have to be like this, we're not here to cause trouble." He stared at the nearest painting, Weiwei smiling like an angel in the blizzard. Gu Jing's eyes suddenly welled up with tears. "Xinxia, I've been having the same dream lately, dreaming that we have a daughter named Gu Shirwei." With his eyes red from crying, Gu Shirbai also looked at me and asked, "Mom, I had the same dream, is it true?" I looked at the father-son pair coldly and said nothing. That day, Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai, with red-rimmed eyes, carefully looked at every painting in the exhibition. The last painting covered an entire wall. Under the magnificent aurora in Iceland, Weiwei grew white wings and flew towards the sky. She was my angel, and she had once been here. Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai stood in front of the painting for a long time. After that, they never appeared in my life again. Extra chapter: when Gu Shirbai was 11 years old, Xinxia remarried and soon had a daughter named Xiangyang. On the day Xiangyang was born, Gu Shirbai climbed to the rooftop of the 37th floor, insisting on seeing Xinxia. Gu Jing looked at him impatiently and said, "Gu Shirbai, stop making a scene." At that moment, both father and son froze. They both thought of that dream and the previous life. When Xinxia stood precariously in the wind on the 37th floor, they had also said to her, "Stop making a scene." The blood that splattered when Xinxia fell and the pallor of Gu Shirwei's death had been Gu Jing's lingering nightmares for years. Xinxia's assessment of him was right. He was a jerk. He had always thought that Xinxia was too dull, too quiet, and too unremarkable. She repeated the same things at home every day, wore similar clothes, and lived like a backdrop. It wasn't until after the divorce, when Xinxia left without looking back, that he realized his true feelings for her. She was like the silent rain that moistened everything, gradually seeping into every part of his life. Once she was gone, it was as if a huge void had suddenly opened up in his heart, impossible to fill. He would instinctively call her name when he couldn't find something. He would turn around, having the illusion that she was waiting for him behind him. One late night, when he reached out and found nothing beside him in his drowsy state, his longing for her suddenly overwhelmed him like a rampant virus, taking over all his rationality. He had to get her back. At that time, he understood nothing, he knew nothing. He thought he had hidden his affair with Zhou Tian well and that he could pretend nothing had happened. since Cynthia loved him so much, she would surely come back to him without hesitation as long as he showed a little kindness. He didn't know that Gusher Bai had told Cynthia everything behind his back. He had no idea what he had done in the previous life. He couldn't understand why Cynthia looked at him with such cold, mocking eyes, as if he were something dirty. It wasn't until he had that dream, in the dream, after Cynthia's death in the previous life, he also came to his senses like he did now and finally realized his feelings for Cynthia. The guilt, heartache, and longing were so intense that they almost drove him crazy. He knew he had to do something, he had to take action, so he took revenge on Zhou Tian. He drove her out of the company, leaving her with no way out, drowning in debt, and eventually forcing her to sell her body. In the end, she contracted a venereal disease and came to him with a knife. As she insanely plunged the knife into his heart, she roared, "Did I force you to cheat? Did I force you to sleep with me? It's you, you're the one who's a jerk and can't control yourself. Why do you blame everything on me?" Yes, he was such a despicable person, always eager to shift the blame and avoid the truth, just like he knew that Weiwei's congenital heart disease was likely caused by Cynthia's emotional shock after discovering his infidelity during pregnancy, which led to Weiwei's congenital deficiencies, but he didn't want to admit it, so he ignored Cynthia's pain and Weiwei's illness, using his affair to numb himself. Even on the day Weiwei died, he still didn't want to admit that he was wrong. He blamed Zhou Tian, claiming that it was her soft and fragrant body that held him back, and that it was she who secretly set his phone to silent, causing him to miss Cynthia's calls and thus miss Weiwei's last birthday. He blamed Cynthia, saying that it was she who signed the consent form to give up treatment without authorization, and that it was she who prematurely ended Weiwei's life, preventing him from seeing her for the last time. It was all their fault. He was blameless. He had always distorted the truth and told himself this, so Cynthia was right. He was a terrifying monster, repulsive and unrepentant. He deserved to fail in winning back Cynthia's love. He was unworthy of it. He no longer dared to see her. In fact, he didn't really want to give up on Cynthia. He still wanted to keep pestering her, but he was afraid of her cold gaze, which reflected all his darkness and laid bare all his dirt. So over the years, he had restrained himself and also kept an eye on Gusher Bai, preventing both of them from disturbing Cynthia. In truth, he also blamed Gusher Bai, resenting him for provoking Weiwei to death in the previous life and for driving Cynthia to her end. Even though he had never properly guided Gusher Bai or stopped his bad behavior, he could deceive himself into believing that he was not at fault and that it was all the fault of the 11-year-old Gusher Bai, in the previous life. After Cynthia's death, Gusher Bai himself suffered from severe depression. Cynthia was spot on when she said that Gusher Bai's bad traits were just like his. Just as he only repented after Cynthia's death, Gusher Bai only realized how much he loved the mother he had been mentally abusing after her death. Gusher Bai began to cry uncontrollably for no apparent reason, lose his temper for trivial reasons, and harm himself if not watched closely, just as Cynthia had done before. And Gu Jing watched all this coldly, with no intention of intervening. In the previous life, Gu Jing had no idea what became of Gusher Bai after his own death. However, in this life, after having the same dream about the previous life as Gu Jing, Gusher Bai suffered from the same severe depression as before. He would often cry and beg to see Cynthia, clutching his chest and asking Gu Jing, "Dad, my heart hurts so much. Do I have a heart disease like my sister? If I have a heart disease too, will Mom and my sister forgive me?" But every time he went to the hospital for an examination, the results showed that everything was normal. When he got a bit older and understood what a psychological effect was, he stopped asking Gu Jing this question, but he still clamored to see Cynthia. Since he was under Gu Jing's watch, he could only spy on every aspect of Cynthia's life through the internet and other people. After discovering that Cynthia had a new boyfriend, he began to provoke Gu Jing just as he had once provoked Cynthia. He would deliberately tell Gu Jing where Cynthia had gone to play with that man, that Cynthia had received gifts from him, that Cynthia had kissed him, and that Cynthia had accepted his proposal. Cynthia was getting married, he repeatedly told Gu Jing, without growing tired of it, how happy Cynthia was after leaving them. He was punishing himself while also tormenting Gu Jing. Through the repeated heartache, Gu Jing finally understood how Cynthia had felt when facing Gusher Bai, and he finally grasped why Cynthia had been so determined to abandon this son. He was just like him, a detestable demon. On the day he learned that Cynthia was getting married, Gu Jing almost went crazy. He desperately wanted to rush to her, grab her, and ask how she could get married, how she could fall in love with someone else, and whether she had forgotten about Wei Wei. But he held himself back and even sent a decent congratulatory gift, despite not being invited. When he learned that she was pregnant and had a daughter, although Gu Jing was heartbroken, he was no longer as agitated. On the contrary, Gu Shirbai threw a huge tantrum. But on that day on the rooftop of the 37th floor, after both father and son were stunned by the words "Stop making a scene" that blurted out, Gu Shirbai came down from the rooftop on his own and never mentioned wanting to see Cynthia again. They looked through Cynthia's Weibo together. A fan asked her why, after painting so many portraits of Wei Wei, she named her daughter Xiangyang instead of Wei Wei. She replied, "Wei Wei is Wei Wei, and Xiangyang is Xiangyang." Others might not understand, but Gu Jing and Gu Shirbai did. Xiangyang was not a substitute for Wei Wei, nor was she there to fill the void left by Wei Wei. Cynthia was a great mother, and she had never shown favoritism to any child. Later, Gu Jing invested half of his fortune in charity and established a children's cardiovascular disease charity foundation. As Gu Shirbai grew older, he often reminisced about his despicable self in the dream of the previous life. In fact, although he liked video games and Zhou Tian, who could design games, he had never really wanted Zhou Tian to be his mother. At first, he just wanted to use this way to rebel against Cynthia's control over him. Later, he simply hated that most of Cynthia's attention was taken up by Gu Shirwei. He was afraid that Cynthia would really stop loving him once she had a daughter. Just as others had said, the 11-year-old him in the previous life probably knew that his actions of deliberately provoking Cynthia and Wei Wei were wrong, and he didn't really want them to die, but once malicious words became a habit, they just slipped out, so he became very silent. Half a year after settling in the coastal town, I received a call from Gu Jing, asking me why. Both he and Gu Shirbai were trying to atone for their sins in their own ways. Many years later, Gu Shirbai finally became a qualified pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon. He almost lived in the hospital every day, either examining patients or performing surgeries. He exhausted himself desperately. As if only by curing more children could he wash away the guilt in his heart. Later, he met a 5-year-old girl. She was beautiful and well-behaved, and she had the same congenital heart disease as Wei Wei. Gu Shirbai was her chief surgeon. The day of the surgery was the girl's birthday. The operation lasted 20 hours and was a complete success. Gu Shirbai walked out of the operating room with a smile, utterly exhausted, and then collapsed. He suffered cardiac arrest and passed away with a smile on his face. Story 2. After my death, 80-year-old Shen Heji married his 78-year-old first love. That day, the finance professor who had been aloof and cold all his life showed a rare, indulgent smile. "I am grateful to the years. I have finally married the girl I liked when I was young." Lovers who had been separated for over half a century finally reunited, their joy moving heaven and earth. Yet I, who had accompanied him throughout his life, was his original partner whose name left no trace. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself sitting on the cold floor, dressed in a provocative outfit, with his back turned to me. Shen Heji's voice was as indifferent as a cloud. "Jiang Ning, if this is really so important to you, we should just get a divorce. The child can stay with me. It won't affect your dating." 01. I stared blankly at his back. This familiar scene had also occurred in my past life. Back then, I was flushed with shame and indignation. I had stripped down and thrown myself at him, but Shen Heji was utterly unmoved by my feelings, angered and resentful at his cold-heartedness. He even thought of taking away my son, whom I had raised through hardships. "Let's divorce then, but Ru Jing stays with me. I'll just never date again," I cried out. I didn't want to end up being looked down upon by Shen Heji over such matters. Shen Heji turned around and gently wiped the tears and snot all over my face. "Jiang Ning, stop it. How can I be assured and let you and our daughter go like this? He was always like this, heartless yet tender." I hated his cold aloofness, but I couldn't let go of his gentle and refined side. My wailing grew even louder. He shook his head helplessly and sighed deeply. "Ning Ning, why don't you believe that none of this will affect my feelings for you?" I naturally didn't believe him. But facing Shen Heji's clear and sincere eyes, I couldn't help but wonder if I was indeed asking for too much. People are varied. Shen Heji, like a flower on a high ridge, probably just wasn't into this kind of thing. Enough is enough. With Ru Jing, I really didn't want to look any further. It was better to just be with Shen Heji. At least his face was pleasing to look at. Thinking this way, My desire for a divorce gradually faded, so I fiercely grabbed his collar, eyes nearly bursting. I warned him word by word, Shinheji, from now on, you better pray I don't find out you have a mistress. He was stunned, then couldn't help but laugh. You, really, say it, I said sternly. Alright, if I betray you, may I be ruined and leave without a penny, alright. Only then did I break into laughter. Leaving without a penny didn't matter. Everyone knew that Shinheji, as a financial genius and the youngest professor, was a gentleman of integrity who valued his reputation above all. The storm passed. He pointed at the stewardess outfit I was wearing and gently shook his head, clearly disapproving. I scrambled onto the bed, diving under the covers, my face burning up. Actually, I never really intended to do anything. I was just curious and couldn't resist trying. Shinheji's deep eyes twinkled with a hint of a smile. I understand. What do you understand? I muttered, clutching the corner of the blanket. He suddenly leaned in close and whispered, I understand that our Ning Ning is very innocent, right? I let out a gasp, entirely wrapped in my blanket. I kept yelling for him to leave. The door closed gently, with a click, along with my restless, eager heart. It was completely locked away, yet I still harbored fantasies that one day, Shinheji, as wonderful as he was, would fall in love with me. But it wasn't until I was old and lying on my sickbed, when he visited me with Lu Yanjing. His hair now silver, confident and elegant. Did I realize I was wrong, terribly wrong? On my deathbed, I looked at Shinheji. Old Shen, I can no longer deceive myself into thinking that my life was just a failed conquest. I am truly a pitiful person. He held my hand, tears falling, acknowledging silently, you've made my life so difficult. Tears of humiliation clouded my vision. If there is a next life, I definitely do not want to live like this. Fortunately, heaven took pity and gave me another chance. Fine, let's divorce. You can keep Rujing, I said coolly as I got up. Shinheji's proud back stiffened, and he slowly turned around, frowning. Ningning, stop this nonsense. Rujing has a professor for a father. His future won't be bleak. His eyebrows furrowed slightly as he assessed me. Then he came over and gently embraced me. Ningning, Rujing is your son. I know how much you've invested in him. I won't fight with you for him. Professor Shin is mistaken. I'm still a maiden. I don't have a son. I hope after the divorce, you can clarify this. I pushed him away, responding with a cold laugh. In my past life, for the sake of Shinheji's reputation, I remained a widow all my life. I also acknowledged the adopted Shin Rujing as our biological son, all for the sake of one day turning this illusion of a happy family into reality. Even in the long, tedious marriage, when I couldn't warm Shinheji's heart, I gradually shifted my efforts to raising Shin Rujing, finding a new purpose. But I never expected Shinheji and his son to be so ruthless. They deceived me thoroughly, leaving me with nothing, even wanting to consume all I had. I remembered it even in death. In my previous life, after I learned of Lu Yanjing's existence, I called Shin Rujing into the ICU alone, emphasizing over and over, he had to ensure my divorce from Shinheji was finalized before I closed my eyes. I wanted to clear my ties with him before I left. I didn't want to still be known as his wife after my death. I found it repulsive. I thought that this son, whom I raised and nurtured into a talented man, would understand me and fulfill my final wish. I gripped his hand firmly, filled with hope. Also, Rujing, you must personally cremate me and bury me in the Jiang family ancestral grave. Mom, you're so ill. Don't think too much. Shin Rujing listened silently, his expression troubled. Whether it's the divorce or not letting Dad handle your funeral, it will only make outsiders laugh at our family. My eyes widened. He looked at me helplessly, as if seeing a child throwing a tantrum. Both Dad and Aunt Lu are old. They want to spend their last moments with the ones they love. Let them settle this one regret. After all, because of you, they wasted their entire lives. Is this still my son? I can't believe it. So I widened my eyes and looked carefully, now middle-aged. He wore gold-rimmed glasses just like Shinhe in his youth, and the more I looked, the more their eyes and brows resembled each other. In his cool and gentle demeanor, there was a hint of aloofness. Perhaps it was a moment of lucidity, but suddenly, a ludicrous and bold thought popped into my head. Rujing, you. I gasped heavily. Ha ha ha, why on earth this nonsense? Nonsense indeed. So his son with his lover has grown up this much. The machines connected to my body started to emit a sharp alarm. Shin Rujing panicked and stood up to call for a doctor, but the ones who came in were Lu Yanjing and Shinhe. Mom, what are you doing here? he turned and instinctively exclaimed. It came out so naturally and familiarly. Lu Yanjing, ignoring the resistance from father and son, walked straight towards me. She sat by my bed, took my withered hand, and spoke calmly. Jiangning, I know you have many questions. You've raised Ru Jing so well, I definitely had to thank you personally. Yanjing, Ru Jing, my gaze wandered over the three faces. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. Lu Yanjing smoothed her white temples, authoritative. You've spent your life doing good deeds. There's no need to make everyone look bad now, is there? Shen Ru Jing mumbled and lowered his head, chiming in. Mom, think about your son too. My promotion evaluation is next month. Shen He, feeling guilty, looked away. A man who had been upright all his life now couldn't even look me in the eye. Good, 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 you're all so wonderful. After a while, coming to terms with it, I pounded the bed and laughed bitterly. My life, Jiangning, from beginning to end, was spent making wedding clothes for others. Even in death, I'm being manipulated by others. My death was silent, and my life details were deliberately obscured. The public only remembers the renowned finance expert Shen He, who, after becoming a widower, reunited with his first love. This couple, separated for 60 years, finally tied the knot in the last stage of their lives, with no regrets and time well spent. The whole world cheered and celebrated for them, while I, who accompanied Shen He for a lifetime and devoted my life to him, was merely a footnote in their love story, not even worthy of a mention by name. Occasionally when people mentioned me, they said I almost made them miss out on a lifetime together, after I agreed to the divorce. Shen He said the same thing he did in his past life. Ning Ning, why don't you believe that whether or not this is true, it won't affect my feelings for you? I believed my grandmother's ghost. My indifference gave Shen He quite a headache. Ning Ning, divorce is not a joke. Let's not make decisions in anger. He turned and left, giving me the cold shoulder, confident that eventually I would come around. At 4:30 in the morning, my alarm rang. I sneered, turned it off and deleted the whole chain. Then continued to sleep soundly. Mom, I want to eat the braised beef noodles you make. You haven't kneaded the dough yet. I'm going to be late. Shen Ru Jing knocked on my door. His intelligence was not fully inherited from Shen He, but his fussy and fastidious character was exactly like him. From a young age, he insisted on only eating meals prepared by me. Go find your dad, I said, pulling the blanket over my head. He paused for a moment, then closed the door firmly behind him. After a good night's sleep, I woke up radiant and carefully applied my makeup before making a long overdue phone call. Fu Yuyan, I heard you've returned to start a business and even got a celebrity girlfriend, something like Lu Yan, right? After my rebirth, I immediately looked into Lu Yanjing. As a popular idol, her information was easy to find. Online sources mentioned she was about to star in a big-budget film, supported by mysterious financial backers, essentially bringing capital to the production team. Before I died, I overheard from nurses that Lu Yanjing had married an overseas businessman, Fu Yuyan. Fu Yuyan passed away 3 years ago due to illness, leaving no children behind. That simplifies things. Unknown to many, I was adopted by the Fu family at the age of 12 and called Fu Yuyan brother for a year, because he had confessed to me, and I later fell for Shen Heji. I wanted to avoid endless complications and decided to completely cut ties with the Fu family. Who would have thought? By missing this connection, we ended up as the early departed original partners of Shen Heji and Lu Yanjing. When I met Fu Yuyan, I got straight to the point. I want a divorce. It could create a scandal that might ruin your girlfriend's public image. So maybe reconsider if you really want to support her. Afterwards, I left all household chores behind and focused on painting in my best friend's gallery. I had lived a life of frustration and died with regrets. Now, I channeled all that energy into my paintings. When Shen Heji found me, I was holding a palette of oil paints, my hands full of brushes, my body smeared with various colors of paint, looking like a dirty mason. This caused Shen Heji, who was a stickler for cleanliness, to frown, seeing that I had no intention of coming out. He stepped inside. Ning Ning, do you know Fu Yuyan? His withdrawal from the movie Promotion City, was that because of you? Fu Yuyan, true to being a businessman, acted swiftly and decisively. I continued with my painting. Oh, does Professor Shen also keep up with the entertainment industry? Shen Heji was silent for a while before carefully replying. The lead actress's agent approached me. This movie is very important to them. I didn't believe him. What is Lu Yanjing to you? Shen Heji adjusted his glasses and said helplessly, Ning Ning, I don't actually know her. It's just, Shen Heji, what do you think of this painting? I suddenly put down my brush and stepped aside. The large canvas depicted a fiery sunset illuminating a desolate mountain path in red. A simple woman was carrying 2 heavy baskets along the fiery red mountain path. Ning ning, you know I don't understand art. Promotion City. This movie. My fingers traced the baskets as I spoke for myself. Do you know what she's carrying? It's charcoal. I turned to look at him, my smile cold. The sun is about to set, the stones underfoot will cool down, but if she's carrying charcoal, she can use the sunset to keep paving the fiery road, burning endlessly. Charcoal can't possibly be this heavy, nor can the sunlight ignite it. That's simply not plausible. So, this is just a lie to deceive women. The sun must set, and the path ahead must darken. The foolish woman in the painting is me from a past life. I viewed Shinheji as the sun I was chasing, and Shinrujing as the charcoal in the basket, my remaining hope, always deceived by lies, carrying the weight. I moved forward, I stared intently at the painting, then suddenly, with a fierce motion, I grabbed the bucket of paint from the ground and hurled it at the canvas. Paint splattered everywhere. The painting I had meticulously worked on for 3 days turned into a thick curtain of black. It was a mourning for the foolish and stubborn me of the past life. All lies are untenable, just like you could never truly love me, I suddenly shouted, gasping for breath and glaring at him. I request that Professor Shin agrees to a divorce. Don't settle. I, Jiang Ning, am never without options. Shinheji was visibly shaken, his expression a mix of surprise and a hint of fear. Other options? Are you referring to Fu Yuyan? He asked, his lips quivering. In that moment, he seemed to finally understand that my resolve to divorce was real. 2 days later, Lu Yanjing and her agent came directly to my door. Upon entering, she looked around with her neck held high. Her demeanor was as if she was surveying her own fiefdom. The young Lu Yanjing was indeed attractive, but her condescending attitude, looking down on others as if they were mere ants, was exactly the same as when she was older. It showed how comfortable and smooth her life had been. Shinheji courteously invited them to sit, taking the initiative to introduce us to each other. The once proud and talented professor, unblemished by the world, was now willing to play the obsequious mediator for the sake of his beloved. Mrs. Shen, what is your relationship with Yuyan? Lu Yanjing sat down with reserve, putting on airs. Oh, asking for favors yet not forgetting to maintain her stature. He once admired me. To him, I might be his first love, his unattainable love. I carefully observed her, responding deliberately and slowly. Her expression changed slightly. Shinheji, who was serving tea, suddenly paused and looked at me. Ning Ning, why haven't you mentioned this before? A good ex should be like they are dead, right? Over the years, I've done quite well, haven't I? Shinheji. The room fell silent, only the agent let out a slight hiss. Why then are you contacting him again and making things difficult for me? Lu Yanjing was displeased, tossing her bag onto the coffee table, the metal zipper clanking heavily against the glass surface, sharp and grating. Ah, truly assuming the role of the lady of the house. I glanced meaningfully at Shinheji. I intentionally said, I heard he might be in a relationship. I wanted to see if he still can't stop thinking about me. If that's the case, oh, that would be problematic. Absolutely ridiculous. Jiang Ning, you are already married, you even have an 8-year-old son. Lu Yanjing stood up, her white jade-like fingers pointing at me, visibly upset. I stood up and brushed her hand away unceremoniously, coldly saying, so what if I'm married? Can't I still think about my first love? You, not only think, I can also make him stay loyal to me in frustration. Are you biting me? Lu Yanjing finally realized something was wrong. A hint of panic flashed in his eyes as he instinctively turned to look at Shinheji. The two exchanged a doubtful glance before quickly looking away. The manager was completely confused. Mrs. Shen, how can you say such things? Your husband and son are right here. It turned out that during our tense confrontation, Shinrujing had come down from upstairs at some point, having overheard our conversation for who knows how long. He was in disbelief. Mom, have you fallen for another man? Is that why you've been ignoring me lately? Do you really not want me anymore? Lu Yanjing, frustrated, glared fiercely at Shinheji. Shinheji quickly stood up, trying to soothe his teenage son. Jinger, your mom is just upset with me. Please, go upstairs, we'll handle this. But Shinrujing wouldn't listen, his gaze fixed on me, as if waiting for me to admit it myself. I pretended not to see, and casually sat back down. Oh, Jinger, how ironic. Choosing his name was just so I could openly call him Jinger. Ning Ning, adults' issues shouldn't involve children, it's detrimental to Jinger's development. After coaxing his son downstairs, Shinheji frowned and scolded me unhappily. How amusing. He could say that adult issues shouldn't involve children, so, should children's issues involve adults? Should a young woman in her prime, like me, pay for their passionate mistakes, serving as a mere titular nanny? Lu Yanjing stood up in anger, grabbed her bag, and stormed out, bumping hard into Shinheji's shoulder. Ha, your wife really lacks manners, just a shallow, low-level woman. I don't believe Fu Yuyan would withdraw his investment because of her. Let's just wait and see, I said confidently behind her back. Miss Lu, I believe you. After all, who hasn't been someone's first love, if not Fu Yuyan? There's always another sucker. As soon as I finished speaking, Lu Yanjing almost tripped at the threshold, practically fleeing in panic. I watched her leave, arm in arm, in silence. Unfortunately, her other sucker, Shinheji, is currently just a professor trying to build his career in academia. His reputation for being young and good-looking surpasses his academic achievements. He's not reliable yet, otherwise, they wouldn't have had to painfully split up due to reality. Jiangning. Fu Yuyan investing in Prompt City is a business move, beneficial for him. Why must you do this? Shinheji sighed, his words full of sympathy for Lu Yanjing. I smiled faintly. Professor Shin, instead of criticizing me here, why don't you go to the financial world and persuade those business tycoons to lend Miss Lu a hand? His eyes behind the glasses suddenly narrowed, and he instinctively opened his mouth to ask me something. But ultimately, he lowered his eyes, sighed, and quietly walked away. I watched his retreating figure with a mocking look. Actually, my staging of today's drama was partly to vent my own frustrations and also to test the waters. If Shinheji felt guilty and offered to divorce, if he gives me enough compensation, then I might consider him somewhat conscientious. But, it's truly disappointing. He still avoids the issue, pretends to be unaware, and is determined to exploit me, shearing me like a sheep. My best friend tapped on my forehead and said, why make it so complicated? Just directly tell him you know Shin Rujing is their son. Shinheji values his reputation. How could he cling to a sham marriage? She doesn't agree with my cautious approach, but she doesn't really understand Shinheji. In my past life, he and Lu Yanjing schemed with all their might, concealing Shin Rujing's origins for decades without a whisper getting out. How could he tarnish his reputation as a professor just because of my words? Even if he doesn't care about himself, he would consider it for Lu Yanjing. Lu Yanjing, 27 this year, needs to transition from a pop idol to serious roles. This blockbuster film is crucial for her. It will determine whether she becomes an overnight sensation, establishing her career, or fades away as she ages and gets eliminated. Then there's the gossip with Fu Yunian. All these factors decide that she can't afford any scandals right now. Shinheji loves her so much, how could he not consider these things? After getting a strand of Lu Yanjing's hair from Fu Yunian, I had all the biological samples I needed from their family. I rushed to get a paternity test done. On the way back, I received a call from Shinheji asking me to come home early tonight. He decided to talk about the divorce, but what I didn't expect was that it was a trap. After 3 glasses of wine, I started feeling hot and an unfamiliar desire began to stir within me. Shinheji came over to support me, wearing the silk white shirt I picked out for him, the top 3 buttons undone, revealing a glimpse of his chest as he leaned over. My throat was dry, and I couldn't take my eyes off him, until he helped me to the bed and began tremblingly to remove my coat. That's when I suddenly snapped back to reality. Shinheji, did you drug me? Shinheji stiffened. Get out, I yelled, pointing at the door, tears streaming down my face from the discomfort. He was flustered and whispered soothingly, Ning, it's not what you think, you just had a bit too much to drink. I've thought this through, let's try to make it work. I'll support whatever you want to do. I slapped him hard. Shinheji, do you think I'm that stupid in your eyes? Can't I tell the difference between drugs and alcohol? If I hadn't been reborn, I wouldn't have known. I would have thought I was finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. He was ready to sacrifice, and I was too moved to suspect anything wrong with the wine. Who are you trying to impress with this heroic, sacrificial act? I pointed at his nose and yelled, I've seen you bloated, balding with a beer belly, greasy enough to make someone sick. I also know how ugly you look with a face full of orange peel skin, smelling like an old man, covered in age spots, with sagging skin hanging over your belly. You think by slipping me some cheap drug, you can make me comply? That's really funny. Overwhelmed by the heat in my body, my words came out harsh and my thoughts scrambled. After the outburst, I pushed him away, shocked and embarrassed, and ran out of the house. It started raining halfway, and I ran desperately, the cold wind hitting my face. Running and running, I suddenly stopped, propped myself up on my knees, and laughed breathlessly. Jiang Ning. You're right in your scolding, aren't you? Isn't it true? Without the filter of love, decades later, isn't Shen Heji exactly as bad and ugly as I described him? To hell with his gentlemanly demeanor, his noble character, and his brilliant talents. After standing in the rain for half an hour, I realized I really had a fever, so I called Fu Yunyan. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital with an 4 in my arm. Jiang Ning, what are you and your husband up to? Fu Yunyan looked displeased as he handed his phone to me. It was his WeChat conversation with Lu Yanjing. Yunyan, Jiang Ning is just trying to spite her husband and seeking validation from you. She's a full-time housewife. What does she know about movies? If you really care about old times, you shouldn't indulge her nonsense. Everyone in the city knows she's madly in love with Shen Heji. Scrolling up, there was a video of more than a minute, under home surveillance. Shen Heji and I were having a candlelit dinner, gazing deeply into each other's eyes. Then I leaned on him, and he helped me into the room. I scoffed coldly and handed the phone back to Fu Yunyan. Then I called the doctor and explained the situation. Bastard, Fu Yunyan cursed, hands on his hips. After the doctor left, Ning Ning, they can forget about this money. It's absolutely outrageous to think you have no one to support you, he said as I fought back tears. No. I'll make them lose convincingly. Fu Yunyan looked at me, puzzled. My best friend Shin Han was on her way, bringing the anime movie sponsorship proposal we had worked on overnight. Shen Heji was right about one thing. Fu Yunyan's investment in Lu Yanjing was a business move, aimed at making money. How could I, then, rely solely on the fragile bonds of our youth to influence him? In this life, I might divorce, but my career will certainly flourish. In my past life, because of Shen Heji's obsession with cleanliness, I gave up the art I had studied hard for 20 years to devote myself full-time to him and his son. At that time, Chen Han had invited me to be the art director for her traditional Chinese-style animated movie. Considering Shen Rujing's busy school schedule and his inability to get along with the nanny, I had declined the opportunity. Now, I aim not only to be an art director but also a producer. Thus, regardless of Lu Yanjing's involvement, I am determined to secure Fu Yunyan's investment. The next day at the business cocktail party, Shen Heji and some industry bigwigs he had invited were persuading Fu Yunyan to continue investing in the movie Cui Qing. The director of Cui Qing was also present. I'm sorry, Director Zhou, but I've decided to invest in Director Chen's movie Neza instead. Which Director Chen? The crowd looked at each other in confusion. Chen Han and I entered, smiling. After a brief introduction, everyone received a copy of the movie sponsorship proposal. After looking it over, several were genuinely interested. Naturally, Chen Han's movie had been a dark horse in her previous life, and now with my rebirth enhancing it, anyone with a slight understanding of movies would know it's a good investment. Thus, no one mentioned Lu Yanjing again, feeling neglected for the first time. Her eyes immediately reddened. Jiang Ning, let it be enough. To spite him, you've dragged so many people into your act. It's too reckless. I'm afraid you won't be able to end this smoothly. Shen Heji furrowed his brows and rebuked me in front of so many people. Then he turned to look at Fu Yunyan. Speaking earnestly, he said, President Fu, as Yanjing's boyfriend, you should know how important the movie siege is to her. I promise to handle things with Jiang Ning properly and ensure she won't be wronged. I didn't respond. Chen Han simply rolled his eyes in frustration. Shen Heji, Ning Ning has only been married to you for 6 years. Have you truly forgotten how profound her artistic achievements are? Fu Yuyan's expression darkened as he spoke bluntly. Jiang Ning isn't causing trouble. It's you who should go back to academia. You don't understand the film industry. Ignoring Shen Heji's displeased expression, he pointed at Lu Yanjing. Moreover, let me clarify one thing. My relationship with Miss Lu is purely professional. Professor Shen, you'd better understand your position before you speak. Lu Yanjing, who had been forcing a smile, could no longer hold it in. She set down her glass and quickly left the event. Overnight, she lost not only a major transformative production but also a powerful financial backer. And I haven't even played my trump card yet. Uncertain whether he was embarrassed or pained by Lu Yanjing's situation, Shen Heji hesitated for a moment before hurrying after her. The crowd looked at me with sympathy. I just smiled. I didn't take it to heart. On the day the paternity test results came out, Shen Heji returned home drunk. Professor Shen, who usually avoided socializing and despised the pursuit of fame, had set aside all his pride for the woman he loved. Yet, he remained cold and aloof before me all his life. Staring at the report indicating a 99% probability of a biological father-son relationship, my heart still ached. I knew, it wasn't that I still harbored fantasies about Shinheji, rather, I couldn't bear to admit that my life, in essence, had been worthless. The truth was brief, but to me, it represented over 40 years of enduring tough days and nights, of relentless hopes and fantasies, still gnawing at my nerves, as I opened the paternity report. I still fantasized, could it be that Shinru Jing was only Lu Yanjing's son, and the resemblance I saw as I neared death was merely a trick of my failing eyes? Now, utterly disillusioned, Shinheji truly did not love me, not in the slightest. Throughout the long years, he never felt a man's instinct towards me. It would have been one thing if he had remained chaste, but he was indeed Shinru Jing's father. This realization trampled all my dignity as a woman into the mud. A surge of hatred welled up inside me, and I bit my lip until it bled. Shinheji, I've decided, I want not just a divorce but also to leave you to them. I suddenly spoke out in the dark dining room. Shinheji looked at me in shock and turned on the light. Why should I patch up your filthy, broken world? This is something you three should face together, I said emotionlessly. Shinheji's face turned pale, his eyes clearing from their haze. He approached, his hands trembling as he picked up the report. After a long while, he lowered it slowly, his voice hoarse. Ning Ning, you know. Yes, I know. Nearly a minute of silence. He knelt before me, choking back tears. He recounted his past with Lu Yanjing to me. Back then, he was just a poor college student, unapproved by Lu's parents. The night they broke up, they impulsively slept together after drinking, due to lack of experience. It was 3 months before Lu Yanjing realized she was pregnant. She had to drop out of school and gave birth to Shinru Jing. Ning Ning, it's my fault. I ruined her life. Shinheji gripped my hand tightly. I only feel guilt towards her, believe me. As for that matter, it's not what you think. I wanted to remain pure for her. Seeing my disbelief, he stood up, pulled me into his study, and took out a psychological report. After that incident, I've been seeing a psychologist. I can't get over it myself. I hate that I couldn't control myself. Ning Ning. Give me some time. Struggle flashed in his eyes as he looked at me painfully. If you mind Rujing, I will send him away and make sure you never see him again. Ning Ning, can we not divorce? My situation is only temporary. I didn't believe a word he said. Shinheji's greatest achievement wasn't in finance, it was in PUA, being a master manipulator, unrivaled by anyone. In my past life, a single sentence. Whether or not that happened, it won't affect my love for you. Had me willingly widow myself for him for a lifetime. Now, another line. I only feel guilt towards her. I want to make it work with you, trying to elicit my sympathy again, as if such good fortune existed. I coldly withdrew my hand. Professor Shen, I'm giving you 3 days to finalize our divorce, otherwise, I will immediately release this paternity test report. During those 3 days, I threw myself into work, cutting off all external information. Chen Han told me that Shinheji spent every day outside my studio, even squatting in the parking lot just to see me. On the last day, he brought Shin Rujing to plead with me. Rujing called out for Mom, his voice hoarse from crying. My heart was as hard as stone, unmoved. Chen Han was moved to tears and locked herself in her office to cry bitterly. For 6 years, I treated Shin Rujing like a precious jewel. He even recognized her as his godmother. She couldn't bear to be apart from her godson, yet I, his real mother, was able to harden my heart. Now, I know you really want to divorce and start a new career. I took a sip of the cold coffee, bitter to the core. Chen Han doesn't understand. When I'm old, frail, and ill, placing all my hopes on him, his cold words would then say, Dad and Aunt Lu are at this age, wanting to spend their last moments with the one they love. Let them settle this regret, after all. They lost a lifetime because of you. No one knew how desperate and chilled I was at that time. Everyone in the world could misunderstand me, even curse me, and I wouldn't blame them. But Shin Rujing, I cannot forgive. It was him who made me end up truly alone in the final chapter of my life, living as a complete and utter pitiful soul. When the time came, I duly arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Shinheji looked much paler and thinner, his lips covered in white dead skin. Dark circles under his eyes like someone who had been ill for a long time. He looked as if a gust of wind could knock him over. Jiang Ning, do we really have to end up like this? He asked. I pursed my lips and looked into the distance. He seemed to want to say more, but finally he just said, "It's right for you to cut your losses. I'm really not sure about my illness, I shouldn't hold you back." The staff member asked him, "Have you made up your mind?" A flash of reluctance crossed his eyes. Then he silently nodded. The stamp fell, permanently ending the twisted fate between us. Whether he truly didn't want to divorce or was afraid I'd reveal Shen Rujing's origins, I no longer wanted to pursue it. Leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, Fu Yuxing's sports car was parked across the street. Before parting, Shen Hezhi spoke his final words to me. He said, "Lu Yanjing was just a youthful impulse, a thing of the past. From now on, he would take good care of Shen Rujing and have no further involvement with her." His sincere and firm demeanor seemed entirely different from the 80-year-old Shen Hezhi. 6 months later, the film was released and achieved great success. At the celebration party, Fu Yuxing hugged me excitedly and spun me around a few times. "Ning Ning, welcome back. This is the real you. I knew you would succeed," I screamed, dizzy and overwhelmed. Pounding on him, "Put me down, haven't you made a fortune too?" Chen Han teased him, suggesting that with the successful investment, he should perhaps return to Australia, as a hefty dividend was inevitable. During those 6 months, as long as I worked late in the studio, he was there with me, even moving his office over. The staff joked about never seeing such a dedicated investor. They even whispered that the Fu family might be bankrupt, relying on this investment for a comeback. When he heard this, he'd laugh and reply, "I can't face my parents until I've won my wife over." Yet, in those 6 months in the glitzy entertainment industry, he was completely scandal-free. Eventually, everyone realized his target had always been me. From being indifferent at first, I moved to disbelief. I hadn't expected that a small love letter from our youth would turn into his fervent pursuit so many years later. When Chen Han privately asked if I would accept him, I subconsciously countered, "Does someone really love me?" She paused, laughed, and tapped my forehead. "My big producer, you're now worth billions. Are you kidding me?" Then it dawned on me. Oh, here I am at 27, still harboring dreams and pursuits of love, full of vigor, believing in the echo of constant thoughts, not like in my past life, where after over 40 years in a loveless desert, I believed I wasn't good enough to be loved, aimlessly toiling away my life. An elderly lady ended up with nothing, so I told Fu Yunian that it might take a long time for me to believe that he loves me. He said it was okay, he would wait. One day, Chen Han rushed into my office with a wedding invitation in hand. "It's strange, Shen Hezhi is actually going to marry Lu Yanjing. This is so unlike his previous behavior," he said. "Something's off. He hasn't stopped trying to win you back these past few months. Why would he do something that's like digging his own grave?" I glanced at the wedding invitation and was drawn to the handwritten signature of the groom. I abruptly stood up. A ridiculous thought crossed my mind. Shen Hezhi had also been reborn, only I knew that the way these 3 characters were written was his new signature, designed specially for him after his 50th birthday, which he used until he was 80. On the day of the wedding, I secretly went to the banquet wearing a mask. Soon after, Lu Yanjing was announced as the new female lead in the movie, prompting the city. She issued a statement retiring from the industry. It was a high-profile move, and her fans proudly claimed that she was going back to take over her family's business, as she no longer cared for the entertainment industry. Regardless, it was a graceful exit. The Lu family's business had been declining, and it wasn't long before Lu Yanjing was busy attending matchmaking events. Though the candidates her father introduced were of questionable quality, which greatly dissatisfied her, the media often captured her leaving these meetings with a frown and in a huff, so before long, she went back to Shen Hezhi. Now, Shen Hezhi, as a renowned university professor with impressive academic achievements, was highly sought after following his divorce. For some reason, however, the two of them made no progress. When asked about his romantic life, Shen Hezhi always openly stated he had no intention of remarrying. During the toast at the wedding, I saw Shen Hezhi instinctively reach for his cane as he turned around, and I knew I was right. Some habits, etched deep in the bones, don't change overnight. Our eyes met. We recognized each other instantly. Outside the hotel in the parking lot, he stopped me. "Regardless, Jiang Ning, thank you for letting things go," he said. His eyes were indifferent, emotionless. Certainly not the Shen Hezhi who had been unable to let go at the time of their divorce. I responded with a light smile. "No need, it was about time." He nodded, somewhat emotionally. "Seeing your achievements today makes me happy for you." "Thank you," I said. Then, we fell silent. That was normal. After all, That's how we had spent the past several years. As we were about to part, he suddenly mentioned that he didn't understand why his younger self had rejected Lu Yanjing. Marrying his first love should have been a regret he was eager to rectify. He still keeps your studio, all the things you left at home. Lu Jing told me that he accidentally damaged one of your paintings and got a severe scolding from him. Old Shenheji looked confused. Jiang Ning, I fell ill when I was 55, and the psychologist said I had forgotten many things. I wonder if it's related to this, I asked in surprise. You were sick, he nodded thoughtfully. Oh. I've been seeing a psychologist without your knowledge. So, did he change his signature not to change his style, but because of his amnesia? Fu Yuyan saw that I hadn't replied for a long time and came looking for me, running into Shenheji. Professor Shen, congratulations on your marriage. He casually put his arm around my shoulder, his congratulations lacking sincerity. Shenheji wasn't upset, he nodded and turned to leave. Even as he disappeared from sight, I watched his receding figure. Jealous, Fu Yuyan took my hand and we walked back. Sourly remarking, what's so good about that old scholar? He looks like he's aging prematurely, all dull and lifeless. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. He continued seriously, don't doubt it, people like him might go bald in their early 40s. Don't be fooled by his refined appearance now. Once he puts on weight, he'll be greasier than anyone. He thumped his robust chest. Like me, I love to work out. Don't dwell on things. I guarantee even at 80 I'll still make your heart flutter. His words made me laugh so hard I almost fell over. A thought crossed my mind. It seems that Shenheji really did suffer from dementia in his old age. A year later, I also went with Fu Yuyan to Australia to meet his parents. You're really heartless, cutting off contact just like that. Even though you're married, we're still your family. Auntie Fu hugged me and wept. Once back at home, with his family's support, Fu Yuyan no longer maintained the humble demeanor he had when pursuing me in China. That's right, this time returning to China, she was smart enough to contact me first to vent her anger. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have bothered with her. As if I don't have my own temper, he said proudly. Auntie Fu, trying to hold back laughter and tears, explained to me, don't believe him, he actually came back to see how you were doing. And what if I was doing well? I asked. Fu Yuyan's expression darkened. He gritted his teeth, knowing that you avoid me like a plague. If you were doing well, I definitely wouldn't appear before you and bother you. I watched him quietly until my eyes were red, unable to hold back any longer. He came over in a fluster trying to console me. It's my fault, I shouldn't have said that, I deserve to be punished. With a cry, I threw myself into his arms, sobbing heavily. In my past life, he must have come to see me too, seeing how I loved Shenheji madly, devoted myself entirely to family and our son, and gave up my own painting and future prospects willingly. So, he silently returned to Australia, cooperating with me, not disturbing me. After confirming my relationship with Fu Yuyan, I returned to the country. Chen Han was planning a new movie, and I needed to go back to help her with the preparatory work. After the meeting, we had a moment to relax and drank a cup of coffee. She told me that during the months I was in Australia, Shenheji and Lu Yanqing's married life was chaotic. She reveled in the drama. That child, Lu Yanqing, we all know how difficult he is to manage. Lu Yanqing is another high-maintenance lady who doesn't lift a finger at home. I can almost picture it. Shen Rujing, finicky and obsessive about cleanliness, dislikes having strangers at home. Lu Yanqing, proud like a little princess, doesn't bother with household chores. Shenheji, engrossed in his research, loves silence, and expects to be waited on hand and foot. What kind of life does this family of three lead? Chen Han chuckled as he pounded the table. You wouldn't believe it, but now everyone at University A, both faculty and students, knows Shenheji isn't up to mark. Lu Yanqing ended up a widow right after getting married and is furious. She didn't even bother to save face for him. Shenheji, once placed on a high pedestal, has been hilariously knocked down. I just smiled faintly at this. Chen Han also mentioned that during their arguments, Shenheji would sigh, saying that Lu Yanqing couldn't compare to me. Unconvinced, Lu Yanqing methodically listed my dozens of virtues, leaving Lu Yanqing so angry she didn't return home for half a month. Now everyone is guessing when these two will finally divorce. Meanwhile, a certain man, overwhelmed with official duties abroad, overjoyed to hear about Shenheji's inadequacies, hurriedly called me to confirm the news. I simply ignored him. After the movie wrapped up, Lu Yanqing found me. Her former glory gone, she slumped down and threw a divorce certificate at me. Jiang Ning, Did you do this on purpose, raising those two to be so critical? Were you trying to get back at me? I stirred my coffee gently. I've taken such good care of your son, and this is your attitude. She was taken aback. You're so dedicated, why not just live well with them? Why come and disrupt my life? If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this situation. Do you love Shinheji? I asked. She replied irritably, I love Fu Yunyan. Shinheji and I were never meant to be. I understood, whether to love or not, for her and Shinheji, was a choice of convenience at the moment. They are both selfish, loving only themselves. If they loved each other, why could they endure half a century without contact, without missing each other, and peacefully live their own married lives? If they didn't love each other, why did they immediately reunite like passionate lovers as soon as their respective spouses passed away, as if they couldn't bear to be apart even in death? Now I understand. For decades, they stayed out of each other's lives because each had someone else to share their burdens. They couldn't give up the benefits and convenience. Their reunion and continuation of their past relationship was merely due to loneliness, lacking companionship, in the absence of better options. They were the best choice for each other. For the elderly Shinheji, being reborn allowed him to marry his first love in his youth, but in the end, it's me, the wife he betrayed, whom he can't seem to forget. Shinheji fell ill, insisting I visit him. Jiangning, I'm on my way out. He struggled to open his eyes and reached out to me tremblingly. I sat by his bed, quietly watching him. I remember. Didn't I promise you that apart from that one thing, I would give you the greatest honor a wife could have, that in this life, I would only ever be with you. I will never betray you. Yes, you've said that before. I didn't shy away. His eyes saddened as he spoke. But I forgot. I found another woman, and I got married again. So, this must be my punishment. I didn't respond, and he slowly closed his eyes, succumbing to a feverish delirium. I knew then that the older Shinheji had passed away. He couldn't merge with his younger self. He had a successful life, both in family and career, yet he always dwelled on the first love he had hurt, Lu Yanjing. He had the chance to go back to his youth and rectify his regrets, but he discovered that the so-called perfect mending was uglier and more unbearable than the regret itself. He couldn't accept this reality. Or perhaps he was too ashamed to face me again. For all these reasons, I no longer cared. When Shinheji awoke again, he looked at me intently like a lost child, his eyes rimming red. It seemed he realized that he had returned. He suddenly grabbed my hand, urgently saying, Ningning, I'm not him. I love you. I never thought of betraying you. He spoke incoherently. You were too good to that old man. You pampered him too much. He never experienced the pain of losing you. I'm not him. I love you. After everything, I clearly know that I love you. Give me a chance. I will change. I pulled away my hand and shook my head. Shinheji, this is you. You can't change. Your personality prevents you from recognizing and seizing what is beautiful. You see others' love as a sign of weakness. So, when he was successful, he looked down on me, ignored me, acting high and mighty, as if he were my deity. But when I truly left, you became afraid. So, he belittled me, and now he's groveling. In his previous life, did he really win? Now I know, he did not. His best years were not spent with the one he loved. He could have had a passionate and vibrant life with me, but he failed to seize it. Instead, we wasted our lives on each other. I am at peace now. For such a Shinheji, no matter who he marries, it's a waste. No matter how many times he is reborn, he is destined to miss out on happiness. And I, with a clear conscience, still have a bright and splendid future. To the old Mrs. Jiangning of the past life, I want to make peace, and then say goodbye. Leaving the hospital, I took out my phone and dialed, Fu Yunyan, I miss you. I can't wait to start my new life. Story 2. On the day I married Shinbai, his first love committed suicide by jumping off a building. On our wedding night, my husband held the body of that woman and wept until his voice was hoarse. He said, Ying, if it weren't for your relentless pressure, how could she have died? Afterward, on every anniversary of our marriage, he would dress in a black suit and visit her grave. He killed my cat and forced me to have an abortion. He said, Furong is dead. How can you smile so happily? You must live the rest of your life in repentance. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my college days. Before Furong had died, and before I had married him, there was still time. This time, I would let him and Furong be together, inseparably locked forever. In May, the air, no longer mild with spring, carried a hint of scorching heat. The sun shone brilliantly. I watched Shinbai running around the basketball court, sweating profusely. It was only after the game ended that I realized I had been reborn, back in my college days. Next would be the classic scene where Furong brings Shinbai water, but this time, I smashed her water bottle. My thoughts echoed slowly in my mind, in my previous life. Just as Shinbai was finishing his game, I excitedly ran to the supermarket to buy his favorite drink and water for his teammates. After paying, I realized that Furong, who had planned to come with me, was nowhere to be found. I didn't think much of it, assuming she was busy with something. I sent her a message and then carried the heavy mineral water towards the basketball court. As I approached, I could hear the cheers. I quickened my pace, but when I reached the court, I saw everyone surrounding Shinbai. In his hand, he held a cup adorned with Peppa Pig. It was unmistakably Furong's cup, and there he was, unabashedly opening it and taking a drink. Shinbai and I grew up together, and since we were little, our elders joked about betrothing us. From the age of 7 or 8, he liked to call me little wife, always making me blush, so I knew Shinbai was a germaphobe. We often studied together in high school, and once I accidentally drank from his cup, although he didn't say anything. His normally calm brow was deeply furrowed. Later, I saw the cup I drank from discarded in the trash. Since then, I knew he had a strong aversion to germs, just like his mother. Seeing Shinbai drink from Furong's cup made me realize they had been hiding a deeper connection from me. Had they exchanged bodily fluids? Was that why he no longer physically recoiled from her? In an instant, I felt nauseated. Meanwhile, I also remembered, I'm not sure when it started, but Shinbai always includes a mango-flavored milk tea whenever he buys some for me. I'm allergic to mangoes, and Mu Furong likes mango flavor. Whenever he gives me a gift, Mu Furong inevitably receives the same. In a past life, I raised the issue, but he just smiled and said, "Ying, she's your best friend and she's not well treated at home. If we don't treat her well, who will?" It seemed reasonable. In my past life, my thinking was simple, never questioning deeper motives. Even before this basketball game, it never crossed my mind that Shinbai might like Mu Furong. After all, he had promised me early on that he would marry no one but me. Too, in kindergarten, he always saved his share of candies for me. In elementary school, if other kids pulled my hair, he would pull me behind him and fight them, 1 against 5, covered in bruises. He would say that he was a man and it was his duty to protect me. During our middle school years, amidst the throes of young love, while other students avoided relationships, fearing a bad reputation for puppy love, he would buy me soda, catch cicadas for me, and pick flowers. He once told me privately, "Ying, we are meant to be together, so it's okay for us to be closer than others at this time." I laughed, feeling a bashful flutter in my heart, my smile sweet and tender. In high school, amidst the rigors of academia, we became the brightest spots in each other's lives. To be with him, I gave up my strengths and chose science, pushing myself to the limit with endless studying. My efforts paid off, and we ended up at the same university. From then on, we were inseparable, the envy of others. So, in a past life, when I discovered his secret dealings with Mu Furong, I couldn't hold back. I rushed forward and smashed Mu Furong's water cup to the ground. He froze for a moment, probably feeling that I had embarrassed him in front of everyone. He shoved me hard. By a twist of fate, I stumbled backwards, tripped over a rock and fell, sprawling ungainly on the ground. It was quite undignified. The surrounding students mocked me loudly. He acted as if he hadn't seen me fall. Bending down to pick up the pink water cup, I landed hard on the concrete, the pain bringing tears to my eyes. Struggling to get up, I noticed blood on my palm from scraping it on the ground. Beside me, Mu Furong, seeing me rise, quickly started with a plaintive tone, "Ying, don't be mad. I just saw that big brother Shen was sweating a lot under the sun, and I was worried he might get dehydrated." Her voice trailed off as she looked down, twisting her fingers. Tears streaked down her pale face, truly a sight that evoked pity. As she spoke, she reached out to pull me in. I shrugged off her hand, and she hurriedly retreated to Shinbai's side. "Big brother Shen, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have offered you my water bottle. I saw you sweating a lot. I'm sorry." She continued to apologize. "Please don't be angry with Sister Ying. It's all my fault. I didn't think it through." Shinbai remained cold-faced, relentlessly insisting that I apologize to Mu Furong, accusing me of being unreasonable. He even questioned me. "What's wrong with taking a sip from someone else's water bottle? Do you want me to die of thirst?" "Ying, I really didn't know you were so petty. Furong is your friend, your best friend. Can't you be more accommodating? When we get married in the future, will you be intolerant even of a female mosquito near me?" His buddies laughed exaggeratedly at this. Someone even joked that my jealousy stemmed from my deep care for Shinbai. Lucky you, brother Shin. Everyone was teasing and making a fuss. That day, I turned and walked away, crying all afternoon. Later, he came to coax me, his eyes reddening as he saw the injury on my hand. Inging, I'm sorry, I had just come off the basketball court and was really thirsty. When I saw her offering the water, I couldn't help myself. I didn't realize how much it mattered to you. It's all my fault, but Furong is your best friend. You guys share a dorm room. I only see her as a little sister, nothing more. I was worried you might accidentally trigger her condition. I got a bit anxious and pushed you. Please don't be mad. That evening, he took me out for dinner and bought me gifts, looking at me with eyes as tender as one would look at a beloved dog. Yes, Mu Furong has depression. She said she felt suffocated at home, that whatever she did was wrong. She comes from a family that greatly favors males over females, where her brother is treated like a king. And even her grandmother won't let her sit at the table to eat. She could only eat what her brother left behind. Mu Furong told us, I really can't stand my brother. He spits in the food while eating, and I can only eat what he leaves behind. If I don't eat, I go hungry. I feel nauseous with every bite. At that time, everyone in our dorm felt sympathetic and comforted her, considering her depression. We all tended to give in to her. 3. Hey, aren't you going to buy some water? Mu Furong's voice brought me back to the present. In a past life, she used the excuse of me going to buy water to hurriedly bring water to Shinbai, blatantly challenging me. I glanced at the Peppa Pig water bottle she hugged in her arms and said with a smile, why buy water when you've already brought some? It must have been my meaningful smile that, for a moment, left her somewhat flustered. I stood up and ran towards the school's convenience store. Perhaps Mu Furong thought I was going to buy water. Yes, I did go to buy water, but I only bought one bottle. Twisting off the cap, I gulped down several mouthfuls. Under the blazing sun, I felt like I was turning into dried salted fish, and I didn't even like basketball. Well, apart from the earth, I'm not really into any other ball games. I took out my phone and called my mom. After exchanging a few pleasantries, I got to the main topic. Mom, let me tell you a secret. Shinbai is dating someone now. Ha ha ha, I said cheerfully over the phone. On the other end, my mom was clearly taken aback. After a pause, she asked me, Ying, what's going on? Aren't you and Shinbai in a relationship? Mom, how could you misunderstand? I hurriedly explained, Shinbai and I just grew up together. If you must blame someone, blame yourselves for always teasing us since we were kids, but really, all there is between him and me is that we grew up together. Perhaps a bit closer than others. Mom, think about it, we grew up peeing and playing in the mud together. How could we possibly date? I deliberately laughed lightheartedly and added, let me tell you, the aloof, handsome guy at our school is really good looking. I'll try my best to win him over. Oh, but let's not talk about me, let's talk about Shinbai. My mom was clearly confused and after a long while, she finally said, alright, let's talk about Shinbai, what's going on with him? Is he really dating someone? Yes, he is even sharing a water cup with a girl, but that's not the point. The main thing is, he managed to get a girlfriend and didn't even treat us to a meal. Can you believe that? My mom, speaking earnestly, said, that's too much. Then, she asked about the aloof, handsome guy at school. I told her I was working on it. After chatting for over 10 minutes, just as I was about to hang up, my mom suddenly asked me, Ying, give me a straight answer. You and Shinbai, are you really not dating? Mom, it could be anyone but him, I said decisively. On the other end, my mom seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. I too, exhaled deeply as I hung up the phone. In my previous life, I was naive and unaware of our family business matters, but in this life, I know it's a critical point. The Shin family is facing major financial issues and is seeking financing. If the financing fails, the Shin family will face the risk of bankruptcy. In my previous life, my family invested in theirs because Uncle Shin told my mom, your Ying's heart is entirely with my boy, and sooner or later, we will be one family. In this life, I made it clear to my mom that I do not love Shinbai. We will not get involved with the Shin family's business. Letting go of Shinbai feels really good. When you no longer love someone, that sense of relief and joy truly promotes mental and physical health. In my previous life, I suffered from depression under Shinbai's emotional abuse, eventually succumbing to breast cancer. In this life, for the sake of my own health, I should love myself a bit more. I was drinking a beverage as I walked to the court and, sure enough, there was Shinbai, tilting his head back, drinking from a Peppa Pig cup. gulping loudly in the sun as his Adam's apple bobbed. Seeing me, he hurriedly stopped drinking and walked over. Ying. Where have you been? He asked with a smile. By the way, did you buy water for our teammates? I shrugged and smiled. Not yet, the supermarket is just over there, only a few steps away. While talking, my gaze fell on the water cup in his hand. He seemed to notice something and hastily handed the cup to Mu Furong. Mu Furong took the cup, a barely noticeable look of disappointment in her eyes. Then she spoke softly. Ying, I think Shinbai was just too thirsty, so I let him use my cup for a bit. Don't get the wrong idea. I pretended to be confused. What wrong idea? Oh, I asked with a grin. Furong, you wouldn't happen to like Shinbai, do you? Mu Furong's face turned pale, and she fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. A flash of panic also crossed Shinbai's eyes. I covered my mouth, chuckling. What's this? College is a paradise for romance. Furong, if you like Shinbai, just admit it. Are you afraid of treating us to a meal to make it official? Shinbai suddenly snapped. Enough, Ying, there's a limit to joking, I sneered, thinking to myself about their deceit. Shinbai and his team won the game, and they had a barbecue dinner that night. He invited me, but I didn't go. Mu Furong went. She came back late, her face flushed from drinking, incessantly talking about Shinbai. I pretended not to hear. Before I knew it, it was the beginning of the month, and it was just me and Mu Furong in the dorm. She suddenly asked me, Ying, hasn't your mom sent you your living allowance for this month yet? I nodded and hummed an affirmation, ready to continue studying my vocabulary. Mu Furong said, then, can you give me my living allowance? I almost burst out laughing and teased her. Furong, you should be asking your mom for living expenses. Why come to me? In our previous life, Mu Furong would often cry miserably in our dorm, complaining that her mother favored boys over girls and wouldn't give her living expenses. She also mentioned that she was an adult attending university and should be self-sufficient, suggesting she should get a part-time job. Being a child who grew up spoiled, how could I understand these struggles? Out of righteous indignation, I would take 3,000 out of my monthly allowance of over 10,000 to support her. Unexpectedly, my support led her to feel entitled to ask me for money. I had already thought of a countermeasure and smiled. Classmate Mu, that's not right. Initially, I helped you because I could afford it, and because we shared a dormitory. Supporting you was out of friendship, not supporting you is my right. After all, my family isn't running a charity. Now, I've fallen for a guy. I pretended to be infatuated, holding my cheeks in my hands and looking sorrowfully dreamy at a 45-degree angle. I want to save some money to buy him a gift and then confess my feelings, I said. Mu Furong was planning to act pitiful and ask for support, but after hearing what I said, she was utterly shocked, her mouth wide open enough to fit an ostrich egg. It took her a long while to stutter. Ying, aren't you and Shinbai a couple? How can you confess to someone else? I laughed. It turned out she knew that Shinbai and I were supposedly in a relationship. I deliberately said, Classmate Mu, you must be mistaken. Shinbai and I just grew up together, and it was our elders who joked about us being a couple. How does that make us a couple? If anything, blame Shinbai for having no sense of boundaries, which caused no boys to pursue me in university. I think I should keep some distance from him in the future. Look, I didn't even go out to dinner with him after he won his last match. With that, I threw my arms open dramatically and exclaimed, Sweet love, here I come. Initially, Mu Furong looked upset, but then she burst into laughter, seemingly overjoyed. She probably thought that without me in the picture, Shinbai was all hers, and she could marry into a wealthy family. That afternoon, Shinbai called me to meet at the school's cafe. I went, ready to clear things up. After sitting down at the cafe, he got straight to the point and asked me, Ying, what are you trying to do? What? I feigned ignorance and asked, Shinbai, just say what you need to say. We've been together for so long, and now you suddenly go silent. You tell me you want to date a guy, that you like someone else. His voice rose sharply. This caused many in the cafe to look our way, gearing up to catch the latest gossip. With a calm smile, I responded, Shinbai, when have we ever been in love? Just because our elders joked about it a few times, or because we've known each other since we were kids, you thought it was love? He suddenly stood up, pointing at me, and said, Ying, you're just a flirtatious woman. I've loved you wholeheartedly, pampered you, since we were kids. I picked flowers and caught cicadas for you, fought for you, helped you with your studies, and now that we're in college, you just plan to erase all that. He was extremely agitated, even shouting, Classmates, won't you judge this for yourselves? The cafe, being on campus, was quite crowded. I stood up and from my bag, I took out a few items and threw them on the table. Shinbai, don't act like you're so devoted. What about the time you and Mu Furong were in a hotel room exchanging intimacies? Why don't you mention that? If we were really dating, would that not be considered cheating? I thought, since we all grew up together, I could forgive you for not liking me and liking another girl. So, what now? Am I the flirtatious one, can't control your own desires, slept with another woman, and you have the audacity to call me flirtatious, while speaking? I threw a stack of indecent photos onto the table and the floor. Grabbing my bag, I turned and walked away. After I was reborn, I immediately hired a paparazzo to keep an eye on Shinbai and Mu Furong, obtaining photos of them together. In fact, these were not intended for Shinbai. After all, he's not married, nor is she. His cheating is his own business. I just need to be clear about it. Not blinded by love like in my previous life, I needed solid evidence to quietly show my parents. To let them know that there's no future between me and Shinbai. No matter what the Shin family says, they should not invest in them. This time, I definitely won't let Shinbai use the family company to bind me for life, nor will I allow him to qualify as the CEO of the group. By evening, the whole school was abuzz with the gossip about Shinbai from the finance department, playing two sides. Hey, did you guys hear? Yes, from your finance department, really good at scheming. Hooking up with another girl while still blaming his childhood friend and girlfriend for fancying someone else. Wow, that's explosive. I dug it up. The affair is with someone named Mu Furong, who's even in the same dorm as his childhood friend. You like Shinbai, and I have no objections to your relationship. But that doesn't stop me from despising you deep down. I don't want to see you. Strawberry Roll quickly pulled me aside and said, Ying, let's go, don't mind her. Mu Furong's eyes reddened. On the verge of tears, she loudly said, you all just favor the rich and despise the poor. Seeing my family has no money, you all fawn over Ying. Iris glared at her fiercely and said aloud, you're broke and still you managed to steal someone's boyfriend. With that, she turned and walked away. In fact, after the affair between Mu Furong and Shinbai was exposed, they openly became a couple. It's unclear what set Mu Furong off. She started to pick fights with Shinbai, demanding this and that, always comparing herself to me. She scoffed at clothes worth a couple of hundred yuan for being downmarket, despised non-branded bags as being unsuitable to carry, and criticized jewelry bought from Taobao as trash. She wanted clothes worth thousands, bags worth tens of thousands, and jewelry made of gold, jade, and pearls. Shinbai had a decent amount of pocket money, but he often needed it to entertain his friends lavishly, while it was fine for him to buy small gifts for Mu Furong. Spending hundreds or occasionally over 1,000 yuan, buying luxury items like tens of thousands worth of bags or gold bracelets was beyond his reach. He began borrowing money from friends and making excuses to ask for more from his family. Initially, the Shin family was unaware of Shinbai and Mu Furong's relationship. The Shin family's finances were in deep trouble, facing the risk of bankruptcy. Shin's father started raising funds everywhere. Naturally, in such situations, close friends and family are the first ones considered. The Shin family had approached my family early on, but my parents, being cautious about business matters, decided to wait and see. Later, after my mom told my dad about Shinbai and Mu Furong's affair, my dad was very annoyed and instead invested in another project. I knew that project. From my past life experiences, it was a real cash cow, so I subtly hinted this to my mom. My parents, being astute, assessed and then invested in this project. After learning this, Shin's father came to our house, inevitably reproaching my parents, accusing them of forgetting past friendships and not helping him out. My dad just smiled ambiguously. Then, Shin's father couldn't help but complain about me. Olji, I know my family's finances are in trouble, facing the risk of bankruptcy, so you're reluctant to invest, but think about it, your Ying's heart is all for my son. The Yi and Shin families, sooner or later, will be one family. What's the use of holding on to your money? Listen to that. Is that something one should say? In other words, it's like saying, your daughter loves my son, and since you only have one daughter, all your assets will eventually belong to my son. Whether you give it sooner or later, you'll have to give it. Why hold on to it? To put it bluntly, it's nothing short of extortion. Upon hearing this, my mother couldn't hold back and scoffed coldly. Old Shen, since when has Ying ever liked your boy? They are just two kids who grew up together and went to school together. Don't you dare tarnish my Ying's reputation. and to top it off, your boy has already been dating someone in school. Oh, and I heard she's mentally ill. Shinbai sure has some peculiar taste." As she spoke, my mother threw a stack of photos she had received from me at Shin's parents. Instantly, the expressions on the faces of the elderly Shin couple changed. The Shin family's financing failed, their bank loan was due, and they were sued by the bank. Not only were the Shin family's assets frozen, but their real estate was about to be auctioned off by the court as well. Shinbai was unaware of all these events. Mu Furong, in her desire to marry Shinbai and now without me as an obstacle, was thus doubling her efforts, gently coaxing him with tender care. This greatly satisfied Shinbai's pride and machismo on a certain level. However, the good times didn't last. Just when Mu Furong thought that her relationship with Shinbai was set in stone, Shin's mother found the school and came straight to our dormitory. She slapped Mu Furong across the face upon seeing her. Then, Shin's mother grabbed Mu Furong's hair and started beating her brutally. "I'll beat you to death, you shameless tramp, you little vixen," Shin's mother cursed and yelled. Mu Furong was beaten to tears, initially unaware that the fierce old woman was Shinbai's own mother. The situation escalated until the head of the student affairs office had to intervene. It got to the point where we had to call the police. Of course, I also called Shinbai to come over. Only then did Shin's mother stop, and both parties began to mediate. Since we were all from the same dormitory, we went along too. Shin's mother kept insisting that her son and I were the real couple, blaming Mu Furong for seducing her precious son like a siren. I couldn't help but scoff internally. Blaming Mu Furong? Why didn't she blame her son for not being able to keep his pants zipped? In a previous life, she used the same tactic to manipulate me, saying that Mu Furong was the one who truly loved her son and would die for him, and me, having won her son's heart, why didn't I cherish him? In that previous life, I was foolishly in love, thinking Shinbai was perfect. The mistake was mine, and Mu Furong's, not his. Brains are a good thing, but if you're blinded by love, you might as well not have one. The police asked me what happened. How would I know? So, I said, Shinbai and I grew up together, and when we were kids, our parents used to joke and tease us about each other. But now that we've grown up, he has fallen for Mu Furong, and I've fallen for someone else. We have nothing to do with each other. That's common knowledge around our school. Shinbai and Mu Furong were in a relationship that had progressed to physical intimacy. When I shared this with the police, they could only try to persuade Shinbai's mother. Unrelenting, Shin's mother caused a scene, demanding that Shinbai break up with Mu Furong and apologize to me. She also told me, "Ying, Shinbai was just momentarily seduced by that wretched girl. Don't be upset." I smiled and assured her that I was not upset at all. "Auntie, I'm actually happy that Shinbai has a girlfriend. Why would I be upset?" After the commotion caused by his mother, Shinbai finally realized that his family had gone bankrupt. He was no longer the privileged young master of the Shin family. That wasn't the end of it. Apart from bank loans, his family owed money to private lenders and had unpaid staff wages. Amidst his relationship woes with Mu Furong, he had also taken out some online loans to compete with me. He had thought that a mere amount over 100,000 yuan would be easy to handle by causing a stir at home, expecting his normally indulgent mother to bail him out instantly. But now, he was stunned. Like his father, he turned his hopes towards my family, pursuing me with all his might. Candles at the dorm door, daily breakfast deliveries, sending flowers. If it had been anyone else, there would have been fans cheering them on, shouting, "Get together." However, at the girls' dorm, just mentioning Shinbai made everyone take a detour. And it wasn't for no reason. His and Mu Furong's indecent photos had hung on the school's public wall for a long time. Just when that scandal had died down, his mother stormed into the school, causing such a scene in the female dormitory that she had to be reported to the police. This gave the school's gossip mongers plenty to talk about. At this point, I, the person involved, wasn't even sure how far the gossip had spread. In any case, I was known as the pitiful one who had been wronged. This morning, Shinbai came again, unable to tolerate it anymore. I threw the rose he handed me onto the ground and exclaimed, "Shinbai, can't you have some shame? You like Mu Furong. Why can't you just be with her properly?" Mu Furong is making a scene every day, claiming we bully and humiliate her, even threatening to commit suicide in a red dress and haunt us as a ghost. We're almost driven mad by her antics. And you're shameless. I have my dignity, and I want to pursue other guys. Your behavior is essentially harassment. You know, if you keep this up, I'm calling the police." Shinbai stared at me, his expression complex. I didn't bother with him further and hurried off to class with my roommates. These past few days, it wasn't just Shinbai causing trouble, Mu Furong was too, she said to me. Ying, since you don't like Shinbai, why can't you let us be? We are truly in love. Please, don't compete with me for Shinbai. I really like him, I love him, I can't live without him. She even knelt at the dormitory entrance with a placard. She asked for my forgiveness. I explained to her several times that I really didn't like Shinbai anymore and had broken up with him. However, she went on to cause several scenes with Shinbai. But after Shinbai became aware of his own family circumstances, he felt a chill run down his spine. To him, I was his only shortcut, so he was determined to win me over at all costs, even if it meant exploiting his charm. At this time, he absolutely despised Mu Furong. He believed that Mu Furong had ruined his chances. If it weren't for Mu Furong actively seducing him, how could he have lost control and gotten involved with her? These shameless words came directly from Shinbai himself. Every time he explained the situation with Mu Furong, he claimed she seduced him. He even said that it was normal for a 20-year-old man to have needs. He even told me that it was a sign of his healthy physique. If I hadn't been reborn, I couldn't imagine how my childhood friend, my once close playmate, could become so shameless. As the final exams approached, we were all too busy to focus on anything but our studies. Unexpectedly, right after the exams ended, a strawberry roll, Little Iris, and I were leaving the exam hall. We heard someone was threatening to commit suicide on the rooftop of the shopping mall across from us. She was even wearing a red dress. Apparently, she couldn't handle being dumped after a romantic relationship. Something felt off. So I hurried with Strawberry Roll and Little Iris towards the mall. It can't be, can it? That foolish woman wouldn't really commit suicide, would she? Strawberry Roll, panting from running, cursed. I hope not. I don't want to deal with such bad luck, unfortunately. We did end up facing this tragic event. In both her past and present life, Mu Furong couldn't escape the fate of suicide. She already suffered from mild depression, and after being dumped by Shinbai and scorned by everyone else, she became despondent. Shinbai also constantly provoked and insulted her. Eventually, just like in her past life, she resolutely chose to end her life by jumping off a building. But this time, the person who drove her to desperation was Shinbai, who had loved her deeply in their previous life. When we arrived, her body had already been taken away, and a distraught Shinbai was being questioned by the police. Since it was a suicide, Shinbai was quickly released. However, he fell seriously ill after being released, reportedly due to the shock. After all, seeing Mu Furong in her bright red wedding dress dead before him was understandably shocking. But after recovering from his illness, Shinbai began to talk nonsense. He claimed he was the CEO of Qingye Group, owning billions in assets and several luxury houses. He said he wanted to marry me. He staggered to my front door. Coincidentally, my mother, worried that Mu Furong's death might have shocked me, had just taken me on a trip and we were returning home. Seeing him in his disheveled, almost homeless appearance, she frowned deeply. Ying, I've found you at last. You see, I was just down on my luck for a while. I will have money. Truly, do you believe me? No, that's not right. At this point, he shook his head and said, marry me, Ying. This time, I will truly cherish you and never let you down. I was really just deceived by Mu Furong. I called security and had him thrown out. Shinbai went mad. To pay for his medical treatments, Shinbai's parents worked everywhere and borrowed money. Life became even harder and more unbearable. Of course, all these had nothing to do with me or my family anymore. A year later, at the business cocktail party of Qingye Group, I ran into Su Yi, the aloof school heartthrob who I often jokingly mentioned to my mom, holding a glass of red wine. He smiled with a refined elegance. Miss Yi, I heard from your aunt that you've admired me for a long time, he said, as he confidently presented his business card QR code on his phone. I felt so awkward I could have dug a castle with my toes. Girls at school who admired him could line up all the way to the Atlantic. Couldn't I just make a casual remark, well then, can I admire you? And maybe we add each other as friends, he said cheerily. What happened to the aloof persona? As the party ended and I was heading to the door, Shinbai suddenly burst out, shouting at me, Ying, it's not like that, it's not like this. How can you fancy someone else? I know you love me, truly love me. As he spoke, reeking and looking like a vagrant, he reached out to embrace me. Because of his beggar-like appearance and the stench he carried, security dragged him away. I walked up to him and just looked at him, and after a long while, I finally said, Shinbai.